Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Roll For It, with favorite YouTube streamers to get together to play some lovely tabletop RPGs. Today, we're doing something slightly different. We're going to be having a bit of a discussion about Shadowrun, and specifically Shadowrun 6th edition, and the rules, and to an extent, the show, as a knock-on consequence. So, we've got a lot of announcements. Well, specifically, we've got a few announcements, but two of them are massive announcements. So, we'll start with the first one. Obviously, some of you will know, probably, that we did a new show yesterday, Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, Silence of Shadows, which is the season 2 of The Sound of Silence, which started yesterday. That, of course, will go up on YouTube after this, but specifically, it's going to be a special one. It's actually going to go up as YouTube premiere. So I believe that's live now, Bentham?
Yeah, the page is now up, so if you go to your subscription feeds, you can already see it sat there ready to go. You can just press the button, and then when it goes live, there'll be a big obnoxious countdown so that you know that the stream is coming.
Yeah, so
and then we'll all watch it together.
yeah, if you wanna dive into that chat now and just leave it up in like an app like tab somewhere, then you will hear the noise when it actually starts. So totally recommend doing that if you actually want to watch VTM from yesterday, or you want to watch it again and you didn't see it yesterday. Whatever plans, recommend it. I think a few of us plan to hold out in the chat and chat as it happens, so that'll be interesting. I hate watching streams of myself back, so feel free. That's one big announcement. We have a few small announcements and another big announcement. So we'll do the small announcements first. If you want to go check out the Patreon, we have a few things over there, including the Nasus intro spiel from yesterday. It's 1,660 words. Pretty good. Recommend you check that out because there's a lot of really cool information about how the world has developed over 10 years since the events of Season 1. Secondly, we have a whole bunch of character sheets and so on from Game of Thrones. I won't spoil anything, but stuff happened. They have interesting characters and they've got interesting abilities. We actually homebrewed a few abilities for the final as well for a couple people. So if you want to go check those out and you're interested about the Game of Thrones show, recommend that. We also have hero name submissions for Hero Tier on Patreon filling up soon, and we're going to have to close that off and push them to the GMs to be able to murder them. So keep an eye out for that and enter your names if you're doing so. In addition, we have the admin summary thingy for last month will be going out this week. Monthly recap, that's the one. That'll be coming out this week, so keep an eye out for that if you are at that tier. And I think there's one other small announcement about Patreon. Is there? Am I forgetting something?
There's probably going to be a couple. I'm going to try and cram a lot of stuff into this week, I think, in terms of Patreon things. So we might also get the Game of Thrones timeline, where I write out the entire list of things that me and E plotted together to lead up to the to the Game of Thrones show. I'm already past 1,000 words. We're not at the Greyjoy Rebellion yet. I haven't even got to when the show begins, and I've read 1,000 words about plotting that's already happened.
Yeah. So keep an eye out for that, especially because a lot of the show focused on internal politics, and there's some external stuff that impacts the events in the show that you didn't really get to see if you watched the show. So you might find that interesting, especially because it'll be laid out in a more consistent format, especially because it's Bentham writing it and not me. You'll probably be able to understand the timeline a little bit better. Which leads me on to the final announcement, and this one is a mixed bag. It's one that we're going to feel very happy and sad about. Maybe not happy, but just so much more relaxed about, and on another part, quite sad to say. We are ending Shadowrun 6th edition Twilight Sins early. This is the last episode under it, even if we're not playing the game, because quite honestly, the system has certain problems, and we're having difficult time running it and also trying to keep up with everything at the same time. And that's something that we're going to be going over a lot today. We're going to be talking about the rules and so on and why we think there are problems, etc. I'm sorry to say that because we all really love the Shadowrun world. I think we all really love the lore and stuff. But the issue is more so that the rule set, and specifically the rule set, especially on a live show, makes it a lot harder to keep track of things. So we're going to be talking a lot about those details today. I think that's all of it for the announcements. So unless I've missed anything, I'll tell you how to support the show. Twitch, Patreon, tips and bits, and YouTube memberships now, which you can do. And obviously telling people about the show. So yeah, going to keep that pretty short because I think that everyone wants to hear about all the stuff we have got going on today in our discussion, which means I'll hand over to Maggie, because Maggie, being the very helpful Type A personality, has a lovely list.
Yeah, so we kind of have a list of things that we're going to go down, and I think E kind of set the tone there. We don't want to burn bridges or anything. We really do love the Shadowrun universe. Obviously, we played between all of us probably oh my God, cats are killing stuff at my house. You know, I'm afraid something's going to break. They've been running around like crazy all morning. Probably like 300 or 400 episodes. And a lot of us have played these episodes are 4 hours long. So it's not like if you put the cumulative hours of time that we've spent playing Shadowrun, it's years probably. In regards to that, you know, I think majorly for us, we really do love the world. Obviously, we love our characters. So actually, I was going to think maybe we wanted to start a little bit with kind of the overarching stuff, and then we'll get into like the nitty gritty and talk about that stuff. So I don't know if anyone wants to kind of just touch on anything in regards to that, or if you want to start right into it, into the list that I have.
Well,
He seemed to be the one who really wanted to go over that part. So
okay, so overarching stuff, I think is honestly my biggest problem with 6th edition rules. I've played Shadowrun since 4th edition, which I know is only like a medium length of time. 4th edition was the one where Catalyst Games Labs first got it, and it had a lot of revisions on that. I think ultimately it got quite complicated, but it was consistent in tone, and it was consistent in some of the rules, and it was well laid out. 4th edition had a pretty decent layout. Like, ultimately, they had a lot of good freelancers working on it. But 5th edition had issues, and 6th edition has the most issues of any major RPG book I have ever read. The tone completely changes between sections. The rules are missing. Rules are missing sections. Rules don't work. Rules don't make sense. For instance, a pixie with a crowbar hits you just as hard as a troll with a crowbar. It's just a bit of a mess.
From my perspective, I'm 99% sure they didn't play test it.
The thing
and
is,
if they did play test it, they play tested it with people who had already played Shadowrun. And so we're just like, oh, yeah. And then they just kind of did the thing that they remembered how to do from a previous edition. The whole thing feels very much like they said, we have these problems. We're going to immediately remove them and then change them for something else. And then realized like halfway through the process that had knock-on effects to the overall structure of the system. Rather than saying we're going to build a new system from the ground up, it's kind of just a variation on 5e, but not play tested.
So I know for a fact that they did actually do some play testing, because there were some people on the Reddit who said that they play tested early editions and they gave feedback which a lot of the community gave. Basically the same stuff we said, saying this isn't ready. It needs another year and you'll probably have it ready. And they were like, no.
So they play tested it and then didn't take any of the feedback.
And again, it was people who'd, solidly played Shadowrun. Like these people I think they got from the errata group, which is a whole nother kettle of fish. Shadowrun, at least until 6th edition, I don't know about 6th edition's case, don't have an errata internally. They get people to do it for free for them and then put it together, which I have issues with. But they took people from the errata group, so people who know the rules inside out, and they got them to play test it, I believe. And I'm not 100% certain on that, but I know at least in one case that's true. And the person who was saying, yeah, I gave this feedback, is one of the people, like you said, people who knew Shadowrun. And yeah, as you said, that's gonna cause issues. I also think another issue for me is that they had decent design goals. Like, you look at 6th edition, you know that they had design goals of let's make it simpler, let's slim down stuff, right? Like, the skill list. I like the skill list change. I think it's like 95% there. I think there are maybe a couple of tweaks, but otherwise, I like the skill list.
Yeah.
I think what they did was look at 5th and look at Anarchy and say, these are the bits from both of these that we want to keep. These are the bits from both of these that we think are probably going to have to go. And then they tried to smush some of their new ideas that they had in there in at a very limited amount of time and resources, which just was a shame.
Yeah.
You're a little quiet for me, Josh, just so you know.
Am I?
I'd love to hear Bentham's
Is this better?
Arcing as well. And then we'll get it. I think we should move maybe into some of the other stuff that we have, because I know that some of these topics are going to be, especially the later ones, like the systems, we're going to have a lot to say, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, the thing with the skill list and condensing it down is like, yeah, I like it, but then when you look at how it's implemented, you think, wait, hang on. Did they think this through? And the answer is perhaps not, because they didn't have the time. Because skills now cost the same amount as attributes to level up entirely.
Yeah,
But there are still more skills than there are attributes, so surely they would have less value than an attribute would. They're kind of really important. Why would you ever level up skills if you could level up an attribute instead?
Yeah, for
We
us,
can
right out the gate, I
speculate
remember that.
what they would like dealing with and thinking about all day. We will never know. But the rule book as it is, I think all of us see some stuff in there that would be kind of cool if it was more fleshed out, more interconnected with the rest of the stuff that existed, though.
I think our overarching goal with this, and whether they'll take our feedback or not, is to kind of provide feedback on the things. Obviously, we've been talking about playtesters, and hopefully they provided good enough feedback. And whether or not the feedback was taken or not, we don't know, right? Like, we are making assumptions, so a lot of what we're thinking is assumptions. But from our perspective, like, these are the kind of things that we'd like to get altered or changed, or would make it a better system for us in order for us to play. So let's just go right into it. We're going to start with meta types first, and if anyone has any thoughts on that. In some of the cases, I think, they won't be bad things. So
there are some good changes, you're right. Meta types, in 5th edition especially, the way they did the priority system, no one played trolls. Trolls were very heavily penalized because you had to be like rank A or B in meta type. The way they've changed it so that meta type gives you extra points to spend on other things, and the fact that any meta type starts just at 1/1/1 rather than having a minimum like base, which they used to, means that they're much more affordable. You can lower the availability of them. I think it's still unbalanced a little bit, but I think it's much better than 5th, where if you wanted to play a decent character, you couldn't play a troll or even really an orc. Everyone played human or maybe elf. I prefer the system in 6, but it still has its issues. But it's definitely better.
How often can you play a swole elf?
In 5th edition, yeah, you can. In 6th edition, you can as well. That one doesn't change much. It's if you want to actually play like a troll, that's the problem.
What priority meta type was Havoc?
You mean elf?
Yeah, but what priority should you pick it at? Like,
Yeah.
Oh,
AB.
what rank?
Let me double check that, because I can't.
Because that'll be in
remember
the
off the
Excel
top of my head.
spreadsheet, right?
I think I took the one that has the most money.
Yeah, you were money A or B.
Yeah, you needed the money. You had
you
meta type D.
used the money.
I did. I used the money, and I felt like I used it well. Maybe a little too well. But that didn't matter because the rolls were so bad still.
No, I want to point out, by the way,
from the perspective of someone picking resonance on the priority table, and I don't know if this felt the same with Magic, it had a similar effect where you didn't have to pick, with resonance in particular, and maybe it's because there's not that many complex forms, I could take resonance at a lower level, and then so I started with fewer complex forms, but then I could boost the actual number using points later on. And that felt pretty nice because it meant I didn't have to take resonance at the highest priority. I could take attributes and skills at a higher priority.
Yeah, I did D for meta type.
Bentham, did you find that with Magic?
I just went with Magic A. I probably could have done Magic B and done that.
So someone on the Reddit did a statistical analysis of that, and it's like, yeah, you straight up lose like hundreds of XP by picking a higher Magic because you can spend the points from the other one into it. I think it was something like that. Like the fact that you can buff it with the meta type points meant that Magic and Resonance you should take really low because it's just not worth it. And I think, again, that's something that you can just see the table.
Especially because spells are as cheap as complex forms. It was only 5 karma to buy a new complex form.
Yeah. So to get that straight, from my understanding, you buy Magic at like as low as 2, wasn't it? And then you can spend points on that to get it up all the way to 6.
Yep.
You start with spells equal to your Magic for free, though, which means the downside is you miss out a few.
But they're not particularly expensive, and I guess it would depend on your GM exactly when you could buy the extra spells. But if you have spells at or Magic at 6, you could get 12 spells overall. and
For
yeah,
free.
by spending karma.
Gunk, when I was doing character creation, I thought you could only start with spells that you got via that, but I think actually you can just buy them with karma, and they're really cheap.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to be like magic D, so you have it, and then attributes spam them into.
The downside is that, like, I don't think you have enough XP at character generation to give you all those spells.
No, I definitely had fewer complex forms
Yeah.
than I would have if I'd gone a higher resonance.
But you could probably have them within 4 or 5 sessions and be a much
They're
more
going to be
effective
cheaper
character.
overall.
Yeah,
Mhm.
much more effective character overall. That's the problem with that one, is that is definitely an obvious one. And also, like, going attributes A is just so good. The table's unbalanced. It was unbalanced in 5th edition, though. I do like the meta-type change.
I think, however, I've always found the priority system to be really interesting. Like, in concept, I like it, but I think it's really hard to balance.
Also, we just got fan art from Void Smoker, which is
Amazing.
fantastic.
I didn't want to interrupt the show, but I was
No,
like,
sorry.
oh.
This is worth interrupting for. That's so good.
Nice.
You know what?
I manage all the social media, so I'm always like watching that stuff, and it looks
So 80s.
Void Smoker, are you in chat? Because if you are and you give me permission, I will totally show this on stream right now. It's so good. But yeah, no. The one thing they did do is they nerfed Mystic Adept slightly. Mystic Adepts definitely needed a nerf. In 4th edition, they were too strong. In 5th edition, they were still too strong. 6th edition, they're still too strong, but they're less strong. Mystic Adepts do need a bit of a nerf. They buffed Aspected Mages in the priority table a little bit. Aspected Mages still aren't strong enough, but they're better. They suck. They are terrible. They're really bad. And they made alchemy more complicated again. But that's a topic for the magic section, I guess.
Yeah. So anything else people want to mention on the meta type?
I liked being an elf because charisma was high,
Yeah.
and I could spec into that just all day long. It was great.
Do we feel like?
I-
I mean, I feel like in general, they get that part the most, to some extent. The meta types, like that didn't change too much, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the
I mean,
most
like,
important change to
functionally it's the
meta types
same.
was what EE said about
Yeah.
being able to have any meta type at any level.
Almost in love, yeah. They did do good with the meta types. They didn't balance it. It's still a bit iffy, but it's better than it was in 5th. And here is the fan art. It is fantastic. Oh, I've got to resize that.
Good.
All I can really do on the metatype discussion is highlight more how it makes no sense in some cases, because the skills versus attributes in particular I noticed were just weird, because the way they scaled from A to E was completely different between attributes and skills. I think it was like, yeah, it was skills. It was like A, you got 30 points in skills, and E, you got like 10 points.
A is 32, E is 10.
Yeah, but then with attributes, A is like 24 and E is
Mhm.
like 3.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
like, hang on, so in one of them it's multiplying by 8 going from E to A, and one it's multiplying by 3 to go from E to A.
Which means
So
that
obviously-
someone didn't get the memo that they're meant to be equal cost. So for some reason, the XP cost is equal, but the character creation is unequal. And you're like, these two sections are very close together. Did someone different write them?
Yeah, like they end up being, you get about the same amount if they're both A. I mean, they can't both. But
Yeah.
like at A level, they're about the same, and at E, they're not at all. So it's like you would always pick attributes higher and skills lower because you still get a bunch of skills, really.
Yeah.
Although,
It's
could have been because they priced them the same in the XP spend.
Maybe they didn't mean. It's probable that at some point the person spec'd them on the old system and didn't know about the changes to XP or something. Specifically, Catalyst make a huge use of freelancers, by the way, and a lot of the freelancers are pretty good. Some of them less so, and a lot of them are new because they did have a lot of them leave between 4th and 5th edition over pay disputes. So a lot of their decent freelancers had been working around for a while, left. And that, I think, is partially where it's
Writers
coming
want
from.
to get paid. They want to get paid to write their stuff that they're writing.
There were issues with freelancers saying, I'm going to take my copyrights away if you don't pay me the money, and then you won't be able to use that. There's a lot of stuff that's also conjectured.
I would also hazard a guess that there may not be the best product management setup given the number of freelancers working with them. Because like even if it's fine, you have freelancers writing for you, somebody has to collect all of that information and be like, oh, by the way, these things don't
Which I think gets back into the tone bit, right? Because the tone is so different between different sections. If you compare it to, like, say, 5th edition maybe, but definitely 4th. 4th is very much, it understands it's a big chunky book with a lot of rules. So it gives you the info, it gives you it quickly, it tells you stuff, it doesn't try to be conversational. I don't mind a conversational rulebook. The Buffy the Vampire Slayer rulebook is a great example of that. Really good rulebook. But it understands it's not thick in rules and it can be conversational. Shadowrun can't do that. 6th edition, they were like, let's be conversational. Argle bargle foofara, hey diddy hobity, no one knows. And you're sitting there going, mate, I just want to know the rules. I'm looking for a reference here. This book's so many pages.
Yeah, and they give a lot of examples where, like, it's like, we don't need examples of this. Just give us the actual rules.
Sometimes they do, but some of their examples are wrong, which is a problem.
Yeah.
Something I noticed with the errata.
On that topic that Lauren brought up too is, like, not only project management, but editing. Like going through and having, like, good editors. I am writing a book series myself, and having a good editor is very, very important. So I think, like, from that perspective, it's like, if you find good editors who can actually make sure and ensure that, your tone's right and all, or like you're going from the right perspective in each of the different areas, depending on, like, how you want the tone to be or the voice to be, then you can make sure that it's cohesive instead of, like, everywhere. Also, where there's pieces missing, where you're like, hey, what does this mean? Or, like, where's
damage
referenced? Provide a page number for this section, like that kind of thing. And then also ensuring that, when you're providing page numbers and things of that sort, that you're not going, here, go to this page, and then you get to that page, and then that section is like, go to this page, and then you're going to that section to go to another page. Bentham and I went through and we were doing a bunch of stuff, and at one point I can't remember what we were looking for, but we ended up going to 4 different pages that it referenced us to go to, because we went from one topic to the next, and then it made us go to another page, and then it made us go to another. I think it was like 3.
Was that ammo?
It might have been ammo. It might have been that topic.
That 5th edition did have those problems, admittedly. But the running joke in the Shadowrun community is editors. What editors? It's actually a joke. So you're right. You've hit the nail on the head.
I'm just saying editors are very important. Sorry, go ahead, Bentham.
5th edition had a different issue when it came to pages referencing other pages, because the numbers were wrong. What I realized is that they did actually fix it in 6th edition, because there's clearly an automated system that you type in, like, the header, and it will automatically put in the correct page number, and they use that to generate those, because they always take you to the right place, but only the right header. So if the header is like a 3-page section and it's page 3 that your thing is on, it'll direct you to the first page of it, and then you've got to scroll until you actually get to the part.
Yeah, side note on that.
It's a page thingy for this about spells, and I went to that page, and it's like, no, it's not here. Oh, next page is here.
Slight side note on that. The Chicago by Night book that just came out has large sections where it's like, page XX.
It's not actually published yet, though.
Is it not published?
Okay. Yeah, that was an early draft.
That's an early draft. Okay. In which case, that makes sense. Because some of them are page numbers and some of them are XX.
Because I was talking to Mathis about that, and it was like, he was having trouble finding something, and we were like, oh, crap. And then I remembered, I looked at the Kickstarter just to double check, but no, they haven't actually released it yet.
Oh, okay.
We got early editions.
I think I grabbed mine from Drive-Thru, so I must have been the early edition on Drive-Thru then as well.
There's like a supporter edition. But yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next topic, which is going to be archetypes. From metatypes, we're going to archetypes, and let's talk a little bit about those. I know there's a lot to go into, and we're not going to necessarily talk about the system, so not combat or magic or matrix stuff, because we have a lot of topics to go into on that front later, because I think those are going to be the meat of most of our discussion. So people's thoughts? Josh, you look like you want to say something.
So face, from a face perspective, there never tends to be many specific abilities or rules like magic or resonance or whatever for a face. So what I ended up being was a Swiss Army knife in some senses, and I don't know whether it was something to do with balance, but on occasion I looked at my stat blocks and I was like, I'm actually good at a fair few things. I didn't roll well, but I was quite good at a fair few things. And having to go through and then deciding on the like special ears thing was actually really fun because, as I say, no like one shape for a face, right? I think out of all of them, it really gives the most wiggle room for inventive character creation, as there are no like specific rules that I had to follow, which I really enjoyed because no specific rules that I had to follow, as well as making my character. And
faces are technically that kind of second role archetype, though. Like you can face and do a lot of other stuff, like face and technomancer, face and magic, like because those are ones that you can use the charisma for other things, so they double synergize, and also you can get stuff that buffs you. And technomancers, you can be like, I'm here to see so and so, let me just check the docket, and you can be like, hack the docket while I'm talking to you to add it. Like they synergize in both like how you act with them, and also that you can use your charisma for other things.
But I think if then you choose to not be a face doubled with something else, I do think you end up in that kind of Swiss Army knife. Because I remember when I ran a Shadowrun campaign, our face, like she was good with sniper, like she was good with rifles. She was also good at talking, and she had all our piloting skills. So you kind of end up being like the catch-all for like, what does the group not have the ability to invest in? I guess I'll be the one to invest in that. And that's also not a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you pick an archetype that's more like that tier 2 archetype where you have extra wiggle room, you can totally spread out, or you can cover something else. Like you can be a second tier samurai as well.
Your agility was pretty high, right? You should, in theoretically.
My two highest stats were charisma 8, agility 6. So
you should theoretically be pretty good at shooting.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Theoretically.
Not taking taser battens, though.
No.
Well,
no.
I mean, if you're a glass cannon, you just got to get the good hits in first. I will say from a technomancer perspective, I'm gonna separate this into two comments. The section was not proofread. There was a direct contradiction about whether or not technomancers had a matrix condition modifier box, but we'll kind of set that aside. So barring some of those issues, I appreciated having fewer skills is helpful. I think just in general for decking, like you could focus on, it was electronics, cracking, and then tasking, and that was it. So 3, which is nice to just be like, oh, I only have to think about these 3 skills, as opposed to like whatever it was in 5th edition where it was like 17 skills that you needed to have for each minor thing. So like that part was really nice. The Technomancer rules were functionally identical to 5th edition though. And in many cases copy and pasted directly over, because there were still several references to things like grids, which they just got rid of. So yeah, I mean, it was fun, but it didn't feel any different than when I built some in 5th edition.
Anthem, how about you? I mean, you've played... In your previous edition of Shadowrun, you played kind of more of that stealthy kind of assassin type of thing, and now you got to play like more of the magic side of things.
Yeah, so it's just like that's the problem is it means I can't kind of compare between them because I've done 2 completely different approaches between the 2. So I don't know if there's anything I can really say about like the change.
You don't say about the change. You can just say about like how it was to play. Did you find issues?
Yeah.
From an archetype standpoint, instead of the rules.
Yeah, like from just kind of gameplay, not from like rules. I think there were parts where it's like there were parts where it's like, yeah, I've got tons of ways to deal with this, and then at certain points it'll be like suddenly I'll be like, oh, I don't think I can use any magic to help in this situation. Just got to sit around. And it's like I would either just use up all my spells and knock myself out, or take no drain because it'd just be like I haven't done anything, or the things I've done are minor. I don't know. Like I was okay with like the role of the magic person in it. I think it worked.
I think your archetype, the rules maybe, but the archetype didn't really change. The archetype was still solid.
Yeah, I don't. As far as I know, I don't think anything's changed about the role of the mage in Shadowrun. Really,
I think you're a little bit more capable of spamming spells occasionally.
Yeah, well, that gets into the rules side of things. Of you can definitely hurl more spells.
I think the difference in the archetype is that you use spells more, and you aren't as big a threat.
Yeah, they've made them like less lethal. Like Geek the Mage is no longer such an important code to live by, really.
I think that the problem is for me that loses a little bit of the iconic Shadowrun-ness that mages are dangerous, take them out first, is the balancing factor. I think they were like, we should balance mages with everyone else. And I don't think for me that's what Shadowrun's about. I think everyone should have their like very tight roles that are dealt with in different ways, as opposed to being, yeah, they fire a ball of fire that does the same damage as a pistol. Deal with it.
Especially since it takes more effort to make those things like summon spirits and things of that sort.
They have brought down the bar a little bit on that as well, but I think that just makes it a case of like making things a bit too similar and making it kind of a
because then I guess it's their theory that they want you to just constantly be summoning things.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a thing I noticed. Maybe this has always been a thing in Shadowrun with mages, but it's like there was definitely, you may have noticed towards the end of the first mission, I had this moment of, I can just solve all my problems with spirits. What if I, instead of actually ever casting spells, what if I just summon a spirit to do the thing I need to do?
Shadowrun's always had problems with spirits.
Yeah, spirits in general have always been a problem, for sure. You end up frequently in this situation where like there's the unspoken agreement between you and the GM that you will not have like a spirit off because you're like, it's not gonna go well.
A few times, this is getting into rule stuff, I guess, more in mechanics, which I think we're doing later. But there were a few times just in character creation before we even got to the game, and maybe a few times in the game as well, where me or one of us would discover something about magic and be like, I'll never use this on you if you never use it on me.
Yeah, that I literally have that conversation with most people in Shadowrun because some of it can be unbalanced. And I also have to have the talk of, so, you're a team of 4 people. You're up against the Man. The Man is a corporation with far more resources. Don't try and do a, hey, I can summon a level 6 spirit and kill everything, because they can do it more, so please don't. And it breaks the rules, and it breaks my heart.
It's like, because you always have HTR. Like, you can always just be like...
And the speed of a spirit is very fast. So if they HTR was gonna summon spirits, y'all dead.
Yeah, you definitely do end up in the Cold War agreement.
I think there are some ways to
like that is an issue with more balance. I think
that also, to be fair, is an issue just with all editions of Shadowrun I've played. That is not specific to 6th edition.
I think the issue with the archetype is
that could be solved, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
The issue with the archetype specifically is they made it more spammable, which is the wrong direction really to go in my view of mages.
Yeah. On the Street Samurai, I feel like I have it the easiest. I think with most games, whenever you choose the melee person option, you usually have the easiest route. Where it came in for me was like obviously character creation, because my goal is to, obviously I'm mostly like hitting things up close and personal, or I'm using firearms, and those were kind of like these are what I'm going to be good at, right? And so I really honed in on, okay, well, I'm just going to make myself as beefy as possible. And what I did was, I had a lot of augmentation, which cost a lot of money. But where I did find that kind of hurt was because I was not able to be healed as easily. And I think ultimately that it was kind of like where it was most rough for me. But because I took good qualities and things of that sort, that really helped me. I feel like I made a pretty great tanky street samurai. Mm-hmm. So on my front, I feel like I had like the easiest of everybody. Combat was pretty, we'll talk about combat later, but I feel like melee combat was actually pretty simple.
I would be really curious, and this is obviously something that you wouldn't be able to answer because we're not playing for long enough to get advancement. I think one of the issues that I've run into with my characters who've played Street Sams is that you can upgrade your skills and ability, but upgrading your cyberware is fucking expensive. And you end up just like not really changing over the course of the game. You're like,
I agree with you. I think like that's where I feel really cool and powerful now. Actually, not really, because I really rolled terribly. But I know that she is. And I think like from my perspective, when the progression comes along the line, my progression was not going to be character strength progression. Where her progression was going to be was in the storyline, right? Because like we all had these like really cool background stories, and I think we love the characters, so that is not a thing. I think we're all really sad to lose these characters because Mimi and Havoc's relationship is epic. I love it, and I love how Concord and the Professor have come into it, for at least from our perspective, because we're a different group. But
I will say one place I think we did fail with our characters.
Yeah.
Y'all, none of our characters were shippable with each other. Like we
Yeah.
we should have
everybody.
but like, come on, we need to plan for this shit up front.
Havoc and Concord, maybe.
Maybe, but like
There
Concord's
was some
like
tension
60.
at the beginning, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Concord's old.
Havoc
Concord's
doesn't judge.
really old.
Equal opportunity for all.
Also, Elf.
I mean, like Mimi. Yeah, Mimi had too much trauma, I think.
Yeah.
I feel like there were ships. I feel like
Yeah.
like Random Tuesday maybe we could get the ships.
I felt very strong that was a deep platonic friendship.
Yeah. In terms of the archetype stuff, by the way, actually also massive shout out to Pav, along with Editorial, who came up with the formula for our luck stats, and has been doing analysis on that. Everyone, for the entire season overall, everyone's positive. Everyone was luckier than they should have been. Which includes even Maggie, despite the session she got like a -10.
I've got the actual lowest score in an episode. I got like I think a -11.8 or
I think that
something.
Was that you or was that your spirit?
That was the spirit, specifically.
No, I think it was me, and then
No,
the
I'm
spirit
pretty sure it was the
also-
spirits.
I think the spirit broke my record for being unlucky.
I think the spirits were like a -13 or something. I don't think you were the lowest. Pav might know in chat, though.
I don't know why y'all think that Havoc was the unluckiest when I had the episode where I got stuck in a box and got knocked out.
That just sounds like you made
Those
that
are
choice.
poor life choices, yeah. Those are poor
It
life
all
choices.
happened because I'm like, I can get through this mana barrier that E is obviously made so that with a bit of effort I could get through. Never mind.
I think you were like a -7 or something on that episode. Like, it was bad. It wasn't Havoc running away and getting shot repeatedly bad.
I feel like it was more the scenario that I was in was like if anyone else was in that scenario, they would have died.
Yeah, that's
there
why
you go.
they have the thing is that especially when you're doing a Shadowrun for me. Overall Maggie did it below average. Maggie, you were so bad you ended up at a -0.52. It was actually that bad towards the end.
It was funny because I'm rolling like 14 dice and EE's rolling like 4 to 6 dice.
I was rolling like 6 or 7 and you were rolling double my dice pool, yeah.
Oh, I was close to at like neutral. I was basically 0.
Yeah.
Very positive.
But the archetype for the samurai hasn't changed much. And one of the things that I do think I like about Shadowrun is, especially if you GM it kind of the right way, is that you are a specialist as well. You aren't just the person who sits there. Like, for going into that mansion, you're the specialist. You're the only one who can do that. Just like the hack is the only person who can hack. And you just got really unlucky on your specialist rolls. But I do think that archetype for the samurai's been nerfed a little bit just because of how they've changed the initiative. Instead of doing passes with the whole action economy thing. I'm not sure I like the new action system very much. I understand it, and I'm kind of okay with it, but I'm not sure I like it.
I kind of like it because I always felt like the combat turn initiative passes thing slowed down a lot.
Yeah, I'm not super happy with that one either. It's just...
Right. Like, I don't necessarily have a great solution to how do you juggle something where you have someone who should theoretically just be working stupidly fast versus like everyone else. I think sometimes it also is just it was a little easier to deal with the movement aspect with the current system because you always only been able to move X number of amount per turn, and when that is something that you can only do when it is your turn, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, whereas if you have multiple turns because you're doing multiple passes,
you're like
anyone who doesn't know, in previous editions you reduce your initiative by 10 and then anyone with a positive number can go again, and then you reduce it by 10 and you keep going. So someone with initiative 31 acts at 31, at 21, 11 and at 1, which meant that street samurais who were really crazy buffed at initiative, acting multiple times, did make them a little bit too strong. I think they got that bit right in terms of how many times they acted, kind of, but I wasn't particularly happy about how the individual actions went, because then they listed all the different actions and I'm like, that means we need an action list, which we didn't need before.
Oh no, we did.
I feel like we did.
Well, I think
having...
that before you could do it conceptually. Like before you could be conceptually half or full action kind of made more sense to me. and now we've got 4-1, and they very specifically wrote out what each thing is. For me, it feels less, but maybe that's just because I've GM'd 4th and 5th a lot.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I found that the actions were pretty straightforward to me. I don't know. I mean, you guys all watched what we did. I feel like for my turns, they didn't take too long. It was just like I like kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do. And I really liked that I was able to, like, you know, shoot, fire, take cover, and reload. Like, I was able to do all of that. But I also have I have some augments that allow me to basically have, you know, an extra full major action, which is nice. If I didn't have that, it would be really rough because I would spend one of my turns just reloading my weapon and doing some other stuff maybe.
I think I'm personally more partial to this version of the system than the previous one because I like the idea that you could shoot twice in a turn. And that seems like something a Street Samurai should be able to do. Whereas unless you have a lot of actions, you couldn't do that. You were stuck shooting once because an attack was a major action. So
I mean, it's the same now because you do need an initiative boost to make sure you can get that second attack in now. But I get what you mean.
Attack is still a major action as is. So no matter what, you can only normally you can only take one. You can only fire one time.
Yeah.
But because of how I built my character, I was able to take 2 actions if I wanted. But often I took like a major and 4 minor just because like it made sense because then I could reload and I could immediately shoot again the next round.
I think the issue that we're bumping up against is that 1 major action, 2 minor actions. That's 1 attack. And some slight buffs or cover or whatever. 1 major action, 3 minor actions. That's 1 attack and some slight... 2 major actions. Suddenly double your damage. I think if they could figure out a way to be more gradual, it'd be good. Again, I don't have a suggestion on this one.
Well,
I just think
what level was your enhanced reflexes at? It was like the top tier, right?
No, top tier 3. She was at 2.
Yeah,
because you got a bonus 2 minor actions, which meant that you could have 2 full actions.
I think the other thing is though that there were other ways that you could attack twice in a turn.
That's an edge thing.
And they involve like splitting dice pools.
There's an edge thing that we'll get onto an edge, which is just nuts.
That's
but there were ways you could attack multiple times in a turn, and I also think that. I think it's still, I don't know, because you're not going to be able to do that every turn. Like, that's the thing, is you're not going to be able to attack twice every turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like an economy of small and large actions, right? And the thing is, compared to the old one, where there were actions where you could spend initiative to do extra stuff, and also every round, technically, you were supposed to re-roll it. Overall,
no one ever. I don't think anyone ever used
that. I strongly disliked that initiative system.
That was dumb, and I don't know anyone who actually really fully played with that. I know people who played with it for a little bit, and then were like, "You fully played? You kept it?
I made them re-roll.
Why?
Because that was the system." And also because of the way I tracked initiative, I had little postcards with a little, I would write on a whiteboard marker. And so then I would erase the numbers as they went down. So I had to have them re-roll because I didn't have the number anymore.
Okay. By the way, just a slight shout out to people at home. If something in a system you think is dumb or isn't working for you and everyone at the table kind of agrees, just change it. You don't have to stick to the rules if you're not enjoying them. Totally change that. And that's one thing that if you played Shadowrun, you get used to.
The problem was for us, for this system.
Once you get used to it.
And we say this, and of course, that applies to us, right? Like I mean, if you've watched any of our games before, you've seen that we've hacked games, we've changed them, we've changed rules, we've even made new abilities for people and things like that. So we're not afraid of doing that. It was just when it came to Shadowrun, we sat down and we were all discussing and we're like, we would want to change a lot of things. And it got to the point where we're like, we're basically making a new system.
I mean,
so for us, it just didn't make sense for us to keep going with Shadowrun 6th edition. But I did want to touch on the Synaptic Booster was 2. I had 2. Mm-hmm. And that cost 190,000 Noyen. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a house rule that I've picked up that isn't perfect, but it's you can trade in your old cyberware or decks and pay the difference, which allows you to upgrade. And that means it's more affordable. Nice. Secondly, it's also run types. You pitch run types specifically to, the group for different things. Like you do a big pay one for the Street Sam, etc. And also you play with the rule of, which is a home rule, which is technically applied in certain places, but you just open it up, which is that you can work for the man or work for the people during your downtime, and you can convert karma into Noyen or Noyen into karma. And I've always played with that because I think that it's very fair, because the mage wants karma, the Street Sam wants money.
Riggers for sure need money. So like if you're playing a rigger
in 6th edition, they need to get in the sea. because in 6th edition they don't do anything.
Yeah, no one touched on the rigger
don't think I
archetype
was
for this at
really
all. No
looked
one
into
was
it.
like, I want to play a rigger, right?
I talked about it, but like the thing was that when EE and I were talking about it, he was like, "You just came from playing Spark, so probably best to not play another character who's like an engineer."
And it was a good call, because
I
in
kind of
this
gravitate
edition,
towards those because I love them, but for a show perspective, I try to like swap it up every time.
in this edition, rigging decks are just terrible, and you're better off just being a mundane meat space driver. It's that bad. But when you mentioned about the modding thing, I think the warning sign for us was we modded before session 1. We changed the cost of skills to make them cheaper. We also made people a custom background qualities and abilities, because the qualities in the core book are all very boring. They're all related to Edge, which will come into an Edge, I assume.
I will also say, though, in fairness to that that's kind of the same thing, because like even the background abilities that I pulled weren't from the 5th edition core rules. They were from like 5th edition expansions. So that's just a nature of
5th edition core rules does it
number.
better, but it is true that there is extra supplements and stuff.
There's a whole bunch of extra stuff. I definitely used a couple of extra things from 5th edition.
And I know there's some questions in chat regarding like why not switch to 5th edition or switch to another rule set. We have talked about it. We've discussed it. But I think we have something else planned that you all will really enjoy. And I think we're all going to enjoy it a little bit more. Because even 5th edition, I think
5th edition
I'm going to throw it to EE and Random Tuesday on that run. Even 5th edition, because they GM'd it, I got to play. So it wasn't like, as a player, it's never as complicated as it is to GM. But even in 5th edition, when we were playing through like our season 2 of Shadowrun, like if you go watch that, we had some problems. So I'll just
Grids Marks Edge.
The thing was that we decided after season 2 of Shadowrun that we would never play Shadowrun again, but what we then convinced ourselves this time around was that we meant Shadowrun 5th edition. That rule, I think, still stands, that we never want to play Shadowrun 5th again because it's too complicated. And we thought they'd simplified it for 6th, but they hadn't.
We were wrong. We were young and we were hopeful.
The book was thinner, and we thought it was because they'd taken out superfluous rules. Instead, they just removed clarifications of rules to save space. Yep. So there was still all the rules, but they no longer.
Getting back to the editing topic very, very briefly on that, they did have a hard cap on the number of pages on this one because they were trying to keep themselves low. The problem is, I think it was the same sort of, like Maggie said, terrible editor who was like, we should have a page limit. Yes, let's do this. And then didn't think about the consequences, because what they did is they took out some of the fiction bits. That doesn't make the rulebook any more complicated. They took out layout, so there weren't properly spaced pages, that all the rules were massive run-on like walls of text where it was hard to find the individual bit. And the issue was it makes it harder to read, and they didn't really massively decrease the rule sections. And things that they did remove, we needed.
Yeah. I've got an example for
that I will likely never play 5th again, but I will play in the Shadowrun universe. So
there are some really good hacks to make Shadowrun work in other systems.
Yeah. There are lots of alternatives.
Yeah. Shadowrun's 5th edition has problems. Definitely grids are just a waste of space. Marks are annoying. Again, that comes back to Matrix. They've never really managed to get Matrix right in 4th edition onwards, which is a shame. And I understand why. It's a very complex
We didn't
system.
even use the grid system in season 2.
No, I cut out grids.
And I had an understanding when I was playing Jade. He was just like, we're changing everything, okay? And we're going to not use this whole entire section. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. If you're wondering, I do have, if you go on the Shadowrun subreddit and you search for my posts, I did post my 5th edition hack, which was called 5.5. Got rid of grids, got rid of marks. Changed Edge because that was dumb, which we'll get onto an Edge in this, I guess, but it's always been dumb. And a couple of other things, and changed how addiction works to make it simpler instead of a nested roll. Changed alchemy, changed mystic adepts, changed aspect in mages. Mostly simple tweaks because I didn't want to increase rule bloat. Ultimately, it did need an overhaul, which is what 6th edition was kind of billed as. And in fact, what they did was copy paste a lot of rules from 5th when they didn't make sense. Yeah, I do wonder if it was the freelancer who copy and pasted the rules and the editor didn't know, or the editor was like, just copy and paste that's fine, and then didn't check.
I wonder if maybe there were just sections they just hadn't hired someone for. They're like, oh shit. So like someone was like,
we don't have time for this, just copy and paste it from 5th, they'll be fine.
There's times where I feel like they literally just took 5th and then edited that, like just swapped out paragraph by paragraph. But didn't.
No, they straight up copy and paste it. Like literally there was there were multiple sections in the Matrix that still reference grids.
Well, I'm saying it's not that they copied and pasted. I'm saying that they had 5th, and they're like, okay, take this out, put this in, and then they didn't do that to everything.
You know what? Now you say that sounds really likely, because when you do that, it's quite easy to skip a few paragraphs and miss something, especially if you've got a poor
They're like, oh
editor.
yeah, this is all still true. Yeah, move on. Okay, remove this.
I actually think that's probably correct.
I don't know if you guys want to move on to the next topic.
Yeah, let's do it.
We're still in archetypes. Whoops.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to watch the time. In regards to the next topic, I think this might be actually a quicker topic, is equipment. So kind of talking about equipment. I know I bought a lot of equipment because I obviously got a lot of money because I knew I was going to spend a lot of money on augmentation. And I feel like there's just a lot of equipment that like you're never going to use. And I wish that, you would, if you're going to make equipment and make really cool concepts and things of that sort, making sure that they're actually like usable things that people want. Some of the stuff on the list, like I would never even buy because it's like, when would I ever use those things, right?
Such nice things.
And rules about them too. Like I think there was a lot of times where we're like, how does this thing work? I don't know, because there's no rule. There's no
again, that one of the things, the one you're referencing is medkits and their rating, which doesn't do anything in
ratings on everything.
Different to first aid kits in their rating.
So there's ratings on everything, which used to be related to limits, and then they got rid of limits.
Limits
but they kept
reduced in, right. So, quick backstory. 4th edition, you could be like, right, I'm just going to pump my agility and be awesome. And then 5th edition, they went, okay, maybe we need to, limits. We take the average of your physical abilities, and that's the maximum number of hits you can get to make sure that people don't dump strength if they're making an agility character. Nice goal. Terrible execution, because now you had more stats to keep track of. And they also made it a limit for certain devices. So devices had a limit, like accuracy on guns, which, by the way, completely get rid of the whole let's have an accuracy modifier out of your stats, because they don't know what they're doing. And they made that a limit for medkits. And then they copy-pasted medkits into 6th edition with a rating.
Yeah, I didn't realize that the ratings did nothing. And then, so I have a bunch of these like high-rated items that I'm like, I should just refund them for rating 1 so I can get more money.
I would have house ruled them to be something like you can use them 6 times before you need to replace it. The supplies or something, and they have a higher hacking defense. That's one thing they do.
But some stuff is not like a replaceable thing, like. So it wouldn't make that rule wouldn't necessarily apply.
Yeah. It's the
auto lock picker is a different story, and it actually is useful, but only when you go up against mechanical lock.
Specific context.
Yeah. Every time you're like, is this a mechanical lock? I was like, sorry, it's not. This is a place that they've got decent security. It's not.
I will say, like,
in our prologue, we encountered a mechanical lock, so you could have used it there.
Yeah,
I know this is something that like just wouldn't contextually fit within Shadowrun, right? Because Shadowrun is this system where you are individually keeping track of things. But I love systems where you can pull the like, here's one I had earlier. And like, you don't have to have your detailed list of gear. You like, it's like the Dungeon World. I know they do that in there where you can just like be like, yes, I have this thing. Or the way like
Adventurers Pack.
Blades, and you can just like check stuff off. So you don't have to be like nitty gritty prepared for it. But I also recognize
50 feet
that
of
would
rope.
not make sense in Shadowrun.
Yeah.
I do wish there were equipment packs though, because I don't know what I want to buy.
In 5th edition, they did make equipment packs, but they brought them in as supplements. I think that because they wanted 6th edition to be streamlined and simple, they should have had them in the core. They should have been core. I personally don't like them, but they should have been an option in core.
Or have stuff that like you get just for your class that makes sense for it and things like that. Like if you want to simplify the system, I think like that's the way to make it easier for people. You're like, oh, this is my archetype, and this is what I get from my archetype. So these are the type of things I will need as this archetype.
I don't think it's necessary to put them down as
like
heavily
having
like
bundles
this is what you
of
get.
Things that make sense.
Yeah, that's what they did in 5th.
Here's the thing though. I found a case where rating does make sense. So they do have cases where it does. For instance, stim packs. So a stim patch is rating times 10 minutes. So like then that case that actually works. But some of these things like don't like what does the rating do? It doesn't tell you. So I legit think it's that they didn't remember to write in the rules what rating affects.
No, I think they legit just copy and pasted them with the rating, and it doesn't do anything. I think they just copy and pasted it. I don't think there's a rule for it.
Because in some cases they did provide details. That's why I'm like, I don't know.
think it's that they cut references where the rating only was the limit, and so if the only function of the rating in 5th edition was to provide a limit for the number of hits, then they cut that but forgot to get rid of the fact that the item still had a rating. So like in the med kit, that was the limit. The limit was the number of hits you could take. So it was important to have the rating. But in like the stim patch, it did something else in addition because it wasn't related to net hits.
I think it's a copy paste issue. You're right.
They deleted it from some things without adjusting the fact that the rating no longer served a function. So I think it's somewhere in between the two, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
In 5th edition, they did introduce equipment kits later on, so they recognized the issue. They had them spread over a number of different supplements. I think they shouldn't be core because it's not what Shadowrun's going for, and I fully agree. I like Shadowrun for what it is, but they should be an option, and they should have been in core book to get people up to speed who are new players. And just okay, you're playing a Street Sam? Sure. Here's wildest reflexes, muscle tone, muscle augmentation, some guns, some melee stuff, some drugs. You're good to go.
So, like, if you go to the archetype section, they do have, like, an example of that for you.
But it's not explain how to build
it's
that.
Not packages. It's like, here's an example of one character.
The issue is their archetype. Okay, for a start, it's tailored for each archetype, and it's not like a kit. It doesn't say, you can buy all this done.
Yeah.
Secondly, their archetypes are wrong, and historically have always been wrong. 5th edition, I think 4th edition as well, the archetypes were badly made, and actually you couldn't make them like that. Like, there were some things that you had to have other things to get, and they didn't have them. And again, that's true in 6th edition. And again, in 6th edition, they mislead people by having a spirit who's casting bugs. It's a spell, I think, they're actually trying to do, but it looks like bugs. Bug spirits in 6th edition from a mage who's meant to be a player character. That's very misleading when bugs are the enemy in the universe.
It's fine.
Argle bargle foofara.
Are there any other things people want to talk about with equipment? I think augmentation, maybe we can talk a little bit about.
Oh, actually, yeah. If this comes under equipment, weapons, melee weapons specifically. I mentioned it very, very briefly. If you have 1 strength and you hit someone with a crowbar, you do the same damage as a troll who has boosted full-on, like, 18 strength. Well, you can't get 18 strength,
it's
but like
not
13 strength.
Scaled.
It's not strength scaled. Yeah, because they were like, right, let's make it simpler. It's a number. Honestly, strength over 2 plus 2 isn't too complicated. When you literally write it down, you go, okay, my strength is 6, so over 2, so 3 plus 2, 5. You just put 5 in. It's not too hard to do. And they got rid of it because they were like, we need to cut stuff. I think it was very poor, again, editing coming down to what we need to cut. And they were like, we just need to cut stuff. It doesn't matter what it is. And it made it completely pointless to have strength in any way. We found so few
it only
uses of
affected
strength.
one roll.
Grapple.
Yeah.
And sometimes athletics. I specifically said, like, when we were doing character creation, I said, I'm going to use strength for more things because A, I think it should be used for more things, and B, I'm putting it back in melee weapons because it should be there. It is so dumb to have a character who punches as hard as a child, who is specifically a street Sam, as just, I can't believe the scale of how do you take that out and think these rules are fine?
I've realized something about the editing mistakes. So I realized, so they must have been like, yeah, let's take out that thing where you add, like, I guess the previous system was like, you have your unarmed damage, that kind of thing, it's strength halved, and you add on the damage of a weapon. I imagine that there's a paragraph in 5th edition that says that, right?
No, it's each weapon for damage. It says S over 2 plus 3 or whatever.
Okay, well, I was wondering if that was the reason why unarmed damage is never explicitly mentioned in the combat, except in passing in a different section.
Yeah, so for unarmed damage, those of you wondering, you can never find unarmed damage. If you look in the grappling rules, in the center of a paragraph, it says, as you know from previous talk, unarmed damage is strength over 2. Funny story, if you take one of your bone lacing upgrades, it changes your damage in unarmed to a flat number. So by taking a bone lacing upgrade, you get less damage from your punches. That has been errated, but it's again an example of them going, wait, what did we do? Oh crap, we didn't think this through.
They forgot to explain unarmed damage. When you look for unarmed damage, I think the only place you find it is in Astral Combat, where it tells you how to do Astral unarmed damage.
Yeah, you can find it in the middle of the grappling section if you look, but it specifically references it as you already know, or as you previously know, or has been explained before. You're like, Mate, you didn't.
Like, it doesn't say that specifically, but it's obviously meant as like a
It phrases
refresher.
it like that,
just
yeah.
says it in brackets. It's not like your unarmed damage is. It says when you do this thing, you deal your unarmed damage. Brackets strength over 2.
Yeah. It's like you already know this.
It's like it's obviously as if they'd already explained it, but somehow they cut that as well. And I wonder if they cut that in the process by accident of cutting the other stuff about.
I think again,
melee damage.
get an editor, man.
A
Editor,
good
like even just
editor
one
team.
editor, and actually maybe one editor would be good because then that
And
person
playtesters.
has like they have read everything, they understand what's happening. But
And then just get a group of 4 people who've never played Shadowrun before and be like, playtest this, please. And they'll be like,
and watch, because like those U
How do
labs
you
of
do
like
unarmed
watching
damage?
users play your product who, and I don't necessarily think people who've never played Shadowrun before, but people who have never, you definitely still need people who understand tabletop games to be playing it.
yeah, I'm not saying like people that don't know how RPGs work, but like someone who hasn't played 5th, because that was one of the problems is they had 5th in their heads already. They were just applying the changes of 6th to their knowledge of 5th when they were testing it, if they were testing it at all.
I mean, we all played 5th, but we could also analyze 6th edition.
The thing is
I
that-
don't
yeah.
think that necessarily is the case. You just have to find the right people, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think the benefit for us is that we play so many RPGs and go through a lot of RPGs that we come back to it. We do need A bit of refreshing, and B, we're used to coming to an RPG and being like, right, where are the things we need to find, as opposed to people who have solidly worked on the
We read a
line.
lot of
That's
books.
We had to check unarmed damage because it had been a while since we played Shadowrun. The people making the rules know how much unarmed damage is, and so they would, if they tested it, they would never actually look in the book and realize it's not there in the book.
Yeah, I
Well,
think
the main thing for me was like when I was building out my Street Samurai, I was like, I don't see anything that I use strength for. So should I just like not put anything in strength? And he's like, no, you have to put stuff in strength. I'm like, no, like I legit think there's like, what's the reason for me to put anything into strength? And then he like looked at it. He's like, we're changing that. He's like, this is
I think it was only because he homebrewed it that I needed to use strength to get out of the box I got stuck in, which is the thing you would use to get out of a box.
Yeah, because normally athletics is actually default agility, right?
It is a default agility. Yes.
Athletics is default agility.
Yeah.
Agility, slight deviation. Agility is always a problem in all RPGs. I don't think I found an RPG where agility is underpowered. It's normally overpowered and normally hilariously overpowered. In D&D, it's the best stat. Sometimes by far, depending on your character. But D&D's got the closest to getting vaguely in balance. In Shadowrun, it's always been a problem. They tried to introduce limits specifically to deal with that and then cocked it up by being like, it doesn't matter. Your limit on the gun is the accuracy, not the limit we made based on your strength. God knows why they did that, but whatever they did. In 6th edition, it's worse because you don't need anything to do with strength if you're a Street Sam. It doesn't do anything. Hitting in combat is your agility, which is fine. It was in previous editions, but your damage is normally strength. Now your damage is a flat from a baseball bat. So you literally don't need strength to hit people with baseball bats. The best person at hitting people with baseball bats is a agility 10 elf with 1 strength.
All right. I want to move on to armor.
There was one last item.
Yep, I was gonna say.
There was one last items thing because it's a brief one. Ammo.
I mean, armor
they
is what,
literally
right?
forgot 3 ammo types.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
And
there's-
I think that needs
Also,
to
they
be
made
said.
them separate costs. I'm like, I already have enough.
and then there are
to-
cost multipliers for like gel rounds and explode.
Cost multipliers is fine when it was just there's 1 ammo cost.
Yeah.
Which it was in all previous editions. 4th and 5th, ammo was this much for this much ammo. They made it more complicated.
Ammo.
Why? This was meant to be the simplified edition. They know that going in. That was one of their design goals. Why?
The ridiculous thing is that they were like, yes, now we'll make every different ammo have a different price, and then they didn't finish the list.
No assault cannon, no shotgun, and no assault rifle or
Shotguns,
something.
and I think rifles and one of the kinds of like a submachine gun or a heavy machine gun, one of them.
Yeah, I think it was the RPK HMG.
Yeah, they
right?
had no
That
machine
one.
gun ammo. It was no machine gun.
Basically, all
No
the
shotgun,
weapons I
nothing else.
took, we couldn't find ammo.
Yeah, like me and Maggie were going through it, and I was being like, "It's got to be somewhere," and the answer was no. Literally, it was.
I was like,
the
Bentham.
Iraqis came out and put 2 of them in. There's still 1 missing.
Specifically, by the way, someone said in chat, can we change from Shadowrun discussion to Shadowrun roast or Salt Run? This is us being relatively polite and having a fair discussion about the problems. If I wanted to roast it, I would.
I don't think we should. I think our goal is not to roast. Our goal is to hit on the topics and be like, here's the things that we found issues with. And it's up to the developers to decide if they want to resolve them or not. And I hope, if anyone's saying something and not providing like a reason for it, then I will dig deeper and be like, hey, don't just say that sucks. Explain why you think it sucks, right? Like we're hopefully giving constructive feedback.
If we were just roasting it, we would have said "argle bargle foo" for a lot more times.
We've already said it in full once, so we're doing good.
I'm gonna blame EE for that.
They put that in a sentence, and we were discussing tone. It needed to be said.
Yeah, the ammo situation is very interesting.
Yeah, again, they had a design goal, right? They had that design goal of let's make it simpler. You could see it, like from all the previous talk, their previous press releases, and what they talked
just
about
make it simpler and be like, this is the ammo cost for everything.
Which is that's not simpler. That was previous editions. They made it more complicated. Yeah. They literally came into this and made it worse.
But you could still have different costs for like gel rounds and so on and so forth. Like that would make sense.
Yeah. Again, that's what it was in previous editions. It was ammo and then modifiers for type of ammo, not type of ammo by weapon. And then they were like, no, ammo by weapon, modifiers for type of ammo by weapon.
Yeah, like the thing is that I don't understand in a lot of cases in this edition, because we know and they know that they had this whole goal of let's make it a bit simpler. Let's streamline it. We're not going to get rid of the Shadowrun crunch, which I agree with. I like that. I love their design goals. Love their design goals. They recognize their problem. And I always appreciate that when someone comes to a thing they've worked on, go, we know what problems we had, let's improve it, right? That's cool.
And it has improved in some places. It has made some things.
The skill list.
Yeah.
That's the one.
That's true.
Meta types to an extent. Not simpler, but better balanced. But not simpler. Simpler was only skill list. For ammo, I can't understand how someone comes to ammo and says, let's add an entire new table of multipliers.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand. Go ahead.
I can get it because, like, it was always a bit weird, I think, that all guns used the same ammo, because it's like, no, in reality, there's different ammos, and Shadowrun's always been a crunchy system. I can see where they do it, but considering that one of their design goals was to simplify and to cut down space, in that context, it doesn't make sense to add that complexity.
Yeah.
To me,
I'll agree with that point.
There and being removed this time.
Yeah, but if they've made that decision for 4th and 5th edition that, you know what, it's too complicated, let's just leave it at the same value, how do they make that decision with 6th edition when they're meant to be going the other way?
That's the confusing thing.
Yeah.
Let's move on to armor, because I think that is a topic.
Naked babies are just as effectively defended as trolls in full armor. Almost.
You get 1 karma.
Edge.
You can get. Wait, is it 1 karma per
Edge.
4? I always do that. I'm really
if there is
sorry.
a difference of 4 or more between your attack value and the defender's value, then someone gets a point of edge.
But it's not like increments of 4. It's just 4, right?
Just once. And you can only gain 2 edge per turn, and there are a lot of things that give you edge, like, night vision enhancements, smart links, etc. So the problem is, and the problem that the Reddit have rightly pointed out, is that you'll get your 2 edge anyway, normally, if we go over every single thing that you have the bonus for, you'll get your 2 edge. So armor doesn't matter. And even if you do get the armor bonus, you get 1 dice reroll, which is the equivalent of an extra third on a dice that's already failed, so works out to be about a quarter of a dice extra on a dice pool. So naked babies, and seriously, the joke is that Havoc could literally be infiltrating that base in a bikini and probably be better off than trying to stop and put on her armor and go into battle.
Yeah, I just think I'm surprised we didn't homebrew armor, but I think it's also because
time.
I think that was the next step.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was why we stopped playing 6th edition, actually.
From my perspective, I'm like, I am a tank and I have no armor.
And because it's linked into the edge, you were like, I think that was the conversation we had, which was like, we should overhaul armor, which means we should also overhaul edge.
Which means we need to overhaul weapon damage, because weapon damage needs to go up,
because,
which means that every resistance test in the entire system needs to go up. And that was why we decided that we couldn't fix 6th edition in time.
It was a very dark spiral.
Yeah, it's like this dominoes effect of like, if you go to the core and then you go out, what does that mean?
And actually, one of the things was when he said, okay, I'm thinking I introduced the old armor rules. I'm like, well, damn, now I need to redo my combat spells because they won't work anymore.
Combat spells would, every damage system in the entire game would get affected.
Also, if
that's because I want it to be different.
Armor, then you need to redo all of the other damage resists because those change.
This touches
We'll
on
potentially need to redo all of them.
This touches on their system, which in previous editions was you have your damage, which is plus net hits. It is resisted by your
Body?
well, in the case of physical stuff, yeah, but it's resisted by an attribute plus another attribute normally, right? And that's how you resist. Like it's your attribute plus like a gear, so like body plus armor, and that means damage is a bit higher. In this edition, they reduced damage a bit. And then what they did is they were like, it's only resisted by body, not armor. And then they tried to make that system the same in all the different places. So it was one stat instead of one stat and a thing, which it used to be. They didn't get it consistent across the board, and that caused a few problems. And then trying to go and retrofit that would cause even more problems. And that's why we just were like, we cannot fix 6th edition. Not in a decent time frame. It needs overhauling.
Yeah. So let's move onward to Edge and Wild Dice, because we kind of like we're starting that conversation anyway.
Yeah, Bentham knows about Wild Dice, right?
Yeah, well, I think I was the one who was kind of most upset about it in the end, because when we were all reading through the book, we all the same thing of there was, I think it was just before the Edge section or just after, whatever, but we got to the Wild Dice section, we're like, oh, this is new. And we read it, it's like, it's a special die that can sometimes be in a roll, and I think if it's a success, it counts as 3. If it's a failure, all your 2s count towards glitches. That's an interesting way to be like, introduce some wackiness. And I'm guessing that there's a couple of key places in the rule set where this comes up. Like maybe there's an Edge thing that does that kind of thing. And then we read through, and we made our characters and stuff, and then somewhere along the line, we all went, wait a minute, where with the Wild Dice? So I had a look. I searched Wild Dice in the book. I did a Control F. It is mentioned 7 times. 4 of those are when it introduces them. There are 3 things in the book that actually use Wild Dice, and none of them are like, you can apply this to a roll of a certain kind. It's like 3 very specific individual things. One of them is one of the things that Mimi has, one of her like abilities.
The
is
overclock
like,
complex form.
This roll. Yeah, one of the complex forms. And then the 2 other things. One of them was you roll a die when doing something with a splash weapon.
Yep.
And I can't remember what the third one was, but they were all just very specific individual things. And it's like, you could tell that what happened was somewhere in the process, they're like, here's this really neat idea we could introduce.
I think they got it from Anarchy. I think that's where they got it.
And the Lancers didn't get the memo.
Again,
like, really
poor editing.
late on.
Poor project management.
And then a couple of them were like, oh, I should put a wild die in my section. And so one ended up in Technomancers, and one ended up in weapons, and one ended up somewhere else. And like, why was it there? Why was it a thing that existed if it was used in 3?
Okay, ignoring where it's used just for now, who read the section on Wild Dice and went, this could be kind of cool? Put your hand up.
I think everyone did. I
Yeah.
know even Lauren. We'll
So,
raise
like-
our hand for Lauren.
There we go. There we go.
Well, that's too many.
Everyone here was like, you know what? Wild Dice could be kind of cool. Like, and then we read the book and we didn't see them anywhere. And then Benson brought it up later on, and we were like, oh yeah, that's wild. Wait, what? We literally forgot about them because they talked about the mechanic.
Yeah, and I know people who are new who are joining and keep going, well, go back to 5th edition. We talked a bit about this before, so if you're coming into Twitch and you're just seeing this conversation and you're like, well, why don't you go there? We also have played a plethora of hours of 5th edition, and we had to homebrew a lot of 5th edition as well. So
from a branding standpoint, we would be playing Shadowrun 5th edition, Twilight Sins, and everybody would go, wait, why aren't you playing 6th edition? Guys, why aren't you playing 6th edition? You should be playing 6th edition. It just came out. Did you not hear? You should be playing 6th edition. And we'd be
I think
fielding
we should play
those.
2nd edition, personally.
I've heard better things about that. Edge, right?
We touched on it a little bit before,
So,
but
do you want to throw out just a list of issues with Edge in 6th edition?
well, should we explain exactly how it works for those like not intimately familiar with 6?
So, for 4th and 5th edition, Edge was a stat. You would have this stat, you could maybe get it ridiculously high and it'd be broken, which would allow you to re-roll some dice. It allowed you to re-roll a number of dice equal to your Edge characteristic. That's dumb. It made it logarithmic. If you had Edge 1, you could once per session re-roll 1 die. If you had edge 7 times per session, you could reroll 7 dice. It was dumb. It was bad. It was broken. It made Edgeomancers a character type, and I always homebrewed it that you reroll 3. Just using the same system as Vampire the Masquerade, you have edge number of times to reroll 3. It worked great. You can also burn it occasionally to do things, and you can use it to fuel a couple of things. Generally, edge has been a pretty consistent system. In this edition, they massively overhauled edge and made it a central part of the combat. How does it work now, Josh?
I'll be honest, I can't remember because there's so many different things going on. But essentially, almost every roll, you have an opportunity to gain edge. You can gain 2 edge per turn for you. And for instance, if there is a narrative reason you would gain an edge for a roll or something, you got a point of edge that you could, in some instances, spend immediately only, and in some instances spend later or whenever you wanted. So there were various augments and abilities and things you could buy character-wise that gave you edge in certain situations. For instance, the cyber ears that Concord had gave him edge in situations where other people had problems with hearing perception. He would get an edge point instantly for that. And that happened. I was going to go into a whole other thing. You get that every time you do a thing, and then you can spend it.
So you have an edge characteristic as well, again. But
yeah,
that's
and
your
you could
base
buy it
edge.
at character creation as a stat.
And that's your base edge. Your edge never goes below that when it regenerates. You can spend below it, but every time you get a new scene, it goes back to that number. So if you have
you
earned
could have
more
like 8
it goes
edge
down.
collected. New scene goes back to 3, whatever your stat is.
You can never have 8 edge. I think maximum is 7 for humans, 6 for everyone else.
Sorry.
But
I think the main thing is that every single time you're like, especially in combat, like anytime you're rolling, you have to basically be like, okay, how much edge do I have? How much, like, like.
So
what's
the issue it
The
raises.
minutia is it's really hard. It's already hard enough to keep track of like inspiration in D&D, and that's like 1.
So
it's either 1 or 0, right?
Yeah, and I still
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, I have inspiration.
So the issue with Edge is manyfold. It starts with the fact that they went, let's make the system simpler, and then they gave you a whole list of Edge actions. It's no longer you just re-roll some dice. It's now, here's a list of actions, and it goes on for 3 or 4 pages saying what each different Edge can do. 1 Edge can get you this, or this, or this. 2 Edge gets you this, or this, or this. 3 Edge gets you this, or this. No one's going to remember that. You have to have the prompts in front of you, which is a problem, and that's a big list of stuff. Secondly, you can only gain 2 edge per turn, which means that after that, any bonuses are pointless, like we talked about with armor. There is literally no point to wearing armor. As we've talked about, a child with a baseball bat is one of the most effective characters in Shadowrun. So Edge, again, is a bit pointless there. Thirdly, they made it a core system, and they actually used it to push out other systems. For instance, qualities. But qualities to begin with, qualities are now almost universally, this gives you edge in this certain situation. And then here's the final kicker, which I think Josh was about to mention, is that in previous editions of Shadowrun, if you had a bit of gear or something that was really cool, it would be like, here's an extra dice to your dice pool. You're like, yeah, I got an extra dice to my dice pool, cool. But they were like, it's too hard to remember all that. You know, you've got this dice that gives you that, this dice that gives you that. Too hard to remember. What if it just gives you edge? Okay, I can see the logic, don't necessarily like it, but I see the logic. And then they went, wait, we've got too many things doing that, you're getting too much edge, you're hitting that 2 limit per turn. What if we make it give you dice? Wait, didn't you just get rid of that because it was too complicated? But wait, we've got another idea. It doesn't make sense to get edge on a hearing check that you can use on a shooting check. So what if we give you edge that you can only use for that dice roll?
I was going to go into this in the equipment section, but as someone who spent a lot of character creation stuff on having awesome Delta Wear cyber ears, it felt kind of like a kick in the balls to have only 1 extra dice, as it was, because of the edge for 1 roll in 1 situation, which was a shame, but that's how it ended up.
It made everything very beige in terms of description and stuff. Like, your cyberware became very beige. And then you've got 3 things to remember. Does it give me edge? Does it give me edge I can use in this test? Or does it give me a straight up dice modifier instead of the dice modifier they were going to try and get rid of for simplicity's sake? They straight up did the thing again where like, let's make it simpler and made it more complicated.
All right. You want to move on to the systems?
My experience of Edge was that I don't think I earned any the entire time we played. I don't know if I missed a rule somewhere, but I don't think I was ever doing anything where I could earn edge.
Before your roll in combat, you were supposed to say, do I have edge here?
Not just in combat. And again, it's not just you're meant to say, do I have edge here? It's both the character and the GM should be looking out for it. And we all failed.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot to remember with Shadowrun.
I'm not just saying in combat, but like, yeah.
They introduced an extra step with that we were like, we do not want to do this extra step. It's a lot to remember and you're requiring an extra thing. We've got to compare this. Why are we comparing this?
But you say when I'm in combat, I check do I have edge. I'm casting spells. What am I checking edge against? My spell?
You have an attack rating, and they have a defense rating. That's what you're always checking.
Does my spell have an? Okay. I did that once. The rest of the time I use spirits. Spirits can't earn edge.
Yep.
And I can't earn via them.
They tried to shoehorn the system in, and they didn't do a good job. Yeah, you're right. Like.
Yeah, what I found was that I had my 3 edge, and if I use it up, I was out of edge.
And ultimately, individual points of edge felt a bit pointless, and if you have certain jobs or you're doing certain things that don't generate that much edge, you feel, which is the problem your own prologue had, is that you used your edge and then you ran out and went, oh,
yeah,
it's screwed.
Yeah.
Do I get edge versus a box? I mean, I wouldn't have, because I was terrible.
Do you want to move on to system stuff? I feel like we've gone through edge as much as we can.
I think we all universally agree that edge was very poorly implemented in many different ways, and it was far-reaching.
So the next things that we're going to talk about are systems. So we'll start with normal combat, and then we'll go into magic and matrix stuff. Saving matrix for last, because we know that's going to be a meaty one. So I think combat-wise, I don't know how other people feel about this, but I actually, like, I mean, we talked about it a bit with the Street Samurai. From my perspective, I didn't really find it super complicated. It actually went pretty smoothly.
Mm-hmm. We talked about the action stuff. We've talked about the edge stuff, the damage resist stuff. We talked about the archetype stuff. The only thing I would add is actually a positive. I would say that the way they've changed, assuming that you accept the edge system, it's terrible, but assuming that we've talked about that and don't factor that in, the way they've changed burst fire to just be it reduces your attack rating by 4 and increases your damage by 2 was simple, and that worked. And every time in that last run where I was shooting at Havoc, I was like, Havoc, you get a point of edge because I'm bursting at you. That was simple. I don't like the edge system, but the -4, which was effectively a -4, it just gives you a point of edge because it will make it too low. I know your armor values. That was simple. I like that.
I used burst fire as well. I gave EE a point of edge. I thought it was simple. I did way more damage than I would have normally. It was good. Yeah. Like the different types of fire, single shot, semi-auto burst fire were the only ones I used. But
actually, that brings up a small point on edge. Using edge as a GM, going back to that. If you gave me edge and stuff and I had 5 edges, like I can legit do a 5 edge move, which will just straight up kill a character.
Oh my gosh.
So I was deliberately as a GM being like, I don't want to use my edge. I'm going to try and burn it on individual dice, but I don't ever want to do a big move on them. Because it's just a straight up dick move of just being able to do a 1 move, kill a player. But overall, I think combat was fine.
Okay, let's move on to magic.
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 Wasn't like it. There were good bits to it. I think like I was okay with the removal of force to spells. Maybe that's because I never experienced it in the first place. E hates it. I think it's fine. Admittedly, a lot of the time they just put force back in, but in a different way. But for me, that worked. But there's a lot of other things that were wrong. One of them was the various different ways in which we were in a magical Cold War. For example, the reduce attribute spell, we realized very quickly, I think, was it that it could just kill someone pretty easily?
Yeah, so the reduce attribute spell is you reduce them by your net hits on the roll or something, and if you reduce someone's attribute to 0, they go out. And the thing is that the attribute spells, both buff and reduce attributes, are no longer pick an attribute. It's reduce attribute agility, or whatever, and that's the only spell you have, it's now reduce attribute whatever you pick. Anytime you come across a foe, if it's like someone who's a thug, you're like, I reduce their logic. If you come across like someone who's particularly clever, you're like, I reduce your strength, because no one has strength.
Yeah, so what happened was I realized, I would just need to pick their weakest attribute and then target that one, and I knocked them out entirely. And then I went, hang on a minute, let me go look at our character sheets. And I'm like, between us, we all have, I think at the time we might have all had something that was 1. I think then
most of you had strength 1 until I warned you.
And it's like, oh yeah, literally all of us could be knocked out by a low-level NPC mage that barely knows what they're doing.
That spell needs to be to a minimum of 1. It's not meant to be a KO spell. Yeah. It is meant to be a debuff spell, and it is very broken. Also, I think both of those spells
that would have been an extra paragraph. Can't have 2 paragraphs to describe a spell.
Yeah.
Not enough pages.
And again, these are things that we encountered immediately we read them. This wasn't something we encountered after playtesting for a long time. This is something we read the rulebook and instantly came to these things. Like, they wrote them. They should know this. And again, I really strongly feel that the buff and reduce attribute spells should be attribute specific, because it's way too powerful. Right now, a mage can be more powerful than nearly everyone by just spamming the attribute spell. Just go attributes A, get decent magic, and just spam your attribute buff.
Yeah, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, I have to take that. That's just a ridiculously easy knockout spell. Until I was like, wait, no, I can't use this because that means you can use it.
Me and Metatalk said, if you use that, I will use it against you. Don't take it.
Yeah, it's like we both realized it's like, this is just a I win the fight button. So we can't take it because then all fights will be over immediately. I'd get knocked out or they'd get knocked out. Either way, it would be dumb. And then the other one was the spirits thing, because in 5th edition, there was a rule about how many spirits you could have. I believe it was that you could have a number of spirits equal to your charisma. So if you really went crazy with your charisma, you could have quite a lot of spirits. You could have maybe even 7 spirits. This time round, they went with force, because force is still a thing for spirits in 6th edition.
Hey, we half got rid of the system.
Yeah, they put the limit. Instead of the limit on the number of spirits, they made it the limit the combined force of all spirits, and they said your charisma multiplied. Oh no, it's your magic, isn't it? It's your magic times 3 is the limit of combined force. So
we both read that and went, so you have 18 level 1 spirits.
Yeah, for about a nanosecond that makes sense, because it's like, oh yeah, if you're magic 6, then you could maybe push like a force 4 spirit. I mean, if you've got your skill high, you can do force 6 spirits like if you really push it. And then it's like, 3 4 6 spirits. That's a powerful force you have, but it's normal. But instead of that, you could just summon 18 level 1 spirits, which is totally legit. And then you also wouldn't have to deal with the drain, because summoning a force 1 spirit, you barely even notice it. It's like a flea punching you. Because they roll 2 dice and you have to resist their hits in drain, and I resist with 12 dice.
I strongly feel that all drain should be minimum 1. You always. I think that all spells should be more effective, but I feel that you should always take 1 drain.
Yeah, that would help, because that's the thing. I was spirit spamming a bit in the mission we were doing in the end, and I was I was deliberately I was forcing myself to be like, I could spam level 1 spirits, but let's use a level 2 for this, because level 1s don't hurt me, and I feel like I should maybe take some stun. But I summoned, I think, 4 spirits. I summoned 4 spirits in that episode. I took no drain. I think I came out of the episode with 2 drain from casting something else later down the line when we were on the boat. And then insane amounts of physical damage because I nearly got killed by that fire spirit. But I could just summon spirits forever. There was nothing stopping me, and I could also have 18 of them at once.
Yeah.
And you can get your magic higher. I think you can get your magic up to 12. Admittedly, that's crazy late game. But that means 36 level 1 spirit.
Yeah, I'm not doing that in the initiative tracker. We're going to treat them like a horde, and I'm just going to kill them in one blow. I just remembered one knock-on effect with armor. You never take stun damage from being shot at a gun that does less damage than your armor, so you just take physical damage, and it was really, really bad for Havoc, and that should have been not that bad. Anyway, spirits have historically been a problem, because spirits are really, really tough. They don't take damage from mundane weapons anywhere near as easily. They got rid of that rule in 6th edition and tried to make spirits more accessible. The problem is that you've made it more accessible to have more people on the board, and that increases complexity. Totally the wrong direction to go. They should have made it much harder to cast spirits, but kept them tough. And
I basically had a rule in the back of my head of like, don't have more than 2 spirits going because that's too many initiatives to deal with.
I think that 2's like the worst case scenario. I think it should be a case of like, you should make spirit like spirit what's it where you have like an opinion, your spirits of opinion of you.
Oh
Spirit
yeah,
spirit reputation, is that it?
reputation. I
Something
think
like
is
that. There's a term.
Yeah.
It might be that.
It's mentioned a lot of times in the fluff. It's mentioned occasionally in the rules, but never really fully statted out properly.
the mentor spirit stuff.
No, there's like a spirit rep. Like if you summon a spirit and you send it against something it doesn't like you send if you summon a fire spirit and you tell it to jump in the sea, it will have to do it because you ordered it, but it will hate you. And that's something that there isn't really a strong rule structure for, but should be the downside to spirits. It should be if you summon a spirit and it gets banished by someone, or if it gets shot by someone and goes out, there should be negatives to that, and they should make that the negative spirits, not let's make spirits more accessible and weaker, because then everyone gets more stuff on the board and it's complicated.
Yeah, they describe it in fluff, but they never like flesh it out properly. They still have the Spirit Bane quality, which the professor had. There's cool backstory to that you'll maybe find out one day if we bring back the characters in some other rule set. Okay, other magic things. Oh yeah, there was a bit I remember.
You can be a nuclear weapon that can destroy the universe, because you can amp up your spells. So if you are a magical like suicide terrorist, you can literally be like, I don't care about my life. I can take as much train as possible. There is no limit to how much you amp up a spell. So you go, I increase the air effect, I increase the air effect, I increase the air effect. Just increase the air effect to infinite, the damage to infinite, cast the spell, die, destroy the universe.
And I'm pretty sure that's totally legit.
It's totally
as long as it's not a sustained spell you're casting. If it's just a combat spell that makes an area of effect, then everything dies.
Honestly, the Force system was simpler for that and worked better, and it used a very similar layout and thought process to how strength worked on weapons. That's why I liked it, because it was very similar mechanics, and you could see it going from section to section that they were the same.
That's one that you can at least homebrew easily. Just be like, there's a limit on how many times you can amp up, or there's a limit on how much drain a spell can have or something. Should be in the book, but at least it's easy to fix.
There's a lot of things that should be in the book. Weren't there a lot of problems in your section about missing stuff on spirits?
Yes. So, yeah, if we get to printing errors, then there's a whole bunch of stuff there. There was one part. One thing, this is kind of just a more general problem, I think. Maybe it's just a problem with me, honestly, but I always struggle to read rule books like the Shadowrun rulebook and find what I need to find in them, because they always just put their roles in the middle of a paragraph. So it's like, I want to know what the role is for doing this, and I've got to go find the section, find the correct paragraph that describes it, and then find where there's a little plus sign, because that's the thing you've got to search for to find where the actual role is. So I just went through the whole chapter, the entire chapter, and I just redid it in a Word document in a way that I could read and work through. That might just be me, or it might just be Shadowrun in general, because I don't think it's different from how they've done it before. But that's an issue I have. Might be dyspraxia. Or dyslexia. One of those. I think if you have one, then you don't know, you can't read the... Anyway. One thing that I found when going through that is all of the errors where it refers to things that don't exist, because I was going through it step by step, so I found everything. One of them is one where there is a 4-step process, I think it's in the alchemy section, where in step 2 it tells you to do something in step 5. There isn't a step 5.
What?
Yep.
I think they were referring to step 4, but it's like, okay, they edited out a step at some point, and they never actually switched out the referrals. And then also, yes, the spirit section, they forgot to include Astral Initiative for all but air spirits. There are 6 spirits. They have little square cards with all their stats on them, and it goes like attack rating, normal initiative, Astral Initiative, and only air spirits have Astral Initiative. It's missing from the remaining spirits. The errata puts it back in. And then also, it doesn't actually explain how to read those cards in that part of the book. It doesn't explain that for a few hundred pages more when it gets to the critters section, because those cards are like the default cards for monsters and like the kind of beings you'll encounter, and it's got abbreviations for what the things are, what the stats are, but it doesn't tell you about those abbreviations except in the critters chapter where the rest of those are. So we literally, me and E, spent like 15 minutes going, I don't know what this means. What is like FN and CM? What do they refer to? Until E finally found the section that does that. So that's a readability issue that is a pain. And yeah, they just forgot to print bits of it.
Again, I'm pretty sure we found that by doing Control F and just looking for some of the tags related to them.
Control F saved us in many ways when looking through the rules. And yeah, there's just so many just errors in that could have been picked up by an editor and that kind of thing. It just seems rushed. It was annoying because I was kind of okay with the mechanical aspects of it, but then they just forgot bits and didn't think other bits through.
And your bit was the least connected to Edge, I think.
Yeah, that's it. Doesn't Edge and Magic barely mix.
Also, I like that Bentham was like, I didn't have that many problems, and then we went for like 20 plus minutes.
I know, it's like, I didn't have any problems with mechanics. I mean, I don't know. I felt like the Magic section was better than most. It was definitely better than the Matrix section.
So, speaking of that, let's move to our fairly final topic, which is going to be the Matrix and talking about all of that stuff. So I'm kind of going to toss it to Random Tuesday, and then we'll kind of wrap things up. And we really appreciate you all hanging out with us and talking to us. Definitely keep, popping in some questions in here. We're watching the chat too, so we'll try to touch on any topics that you have questions about as well.
So good parts. They got rid of grids, barring places where they forgot to note that they've gotten rid of grids, but they got rid of them. Plus side, they got rid of marks and replaced it with a slightly more sensical system around needing certain levels of access. Functionally, it performs like after playing it as like the sounded better, but it basically means instead of 3 marks, you just need 2 marks is sort of the equivalent of what it is. They didn't include a lot of rules that you needed to know, like in the original edition before they released the errata. At no point it told you how to resist matrix damage. Just didn't include it. Just all of it was maybe unresisted. So that was the thing that it missed out. And things like it wasn't super clear on how pans worked. It was a lot better in terms of how hosts work, because hosts were now this kind of nested thing, but also that meant like I need admin access. It wasn't clear what level of access you would need to get into a higher level host if you were in the host. Like, could I just bypass a bunch of them, or do I need admin access for each level of the host? So while they changed the system, they then forgot to provide a bunch of details about how it worked. And then functionally, everything else was the same as 5th edition. The number of actions that you could take was identical and stupidly long. And they took the idea of like, yes, you will always roll for illegal actions, you will always do cracking plus logic. And for legal actions, you'll always do electronics plus logic, except in all of these instances where you will do something entirely different. So there was no like shorthand for remembering stuff. So I just had to look at the list, and the defenses were all over the map. It was like, this one's willpower and firewall. This one's firewall ×2. This one's this. So it was absolutely no simpler than 5th edition. That's my conclusion on the Matrix section.
There was one good bit.
Mm-hmm.
Probing the back door.
The name, I really hope someone knew what they were doing. You had to probe the host to do a backdoor entry, and if that didn't work, you could brute force your way in. So I really hope they knew what they were doing, but I'm not sure.
Well, they didn't with anything else, so
yeah. So in conclusion, that was the Matrix section. Like, it functionally is almost identical to 5th edition if you just took out grids and then changed marks to you need 2 marks and you call it user access or admin access. Like, that's basically how the system goes. And then reduce the skill list slightly.
Yeah, in fairness, like, Matrix has always been a very problem area for them. It's always been difficult because it's an entirely new level, and you have to do stuff on it, and in 4th and 5th, it was still never great.
Yep.
But doesn't mean it's good.
Yep. So, anyway, that's my summary about the Matrix section. Oh,
Yeah.
it's missing a lot of stuff.
I think the issue is when talking about the magic section, there are individual points to talk on, but the Matrix section is just
They just didn't really change a whole lot. Like, they changed like 2 things, and only one of those things was like definitely a good change, and the other one was like, is this better? And then, other than reducing the skill list, they didn't really change anything. There's the same number of actions that you can take.
I do want to touch on the Matrix Condition monitor for Technomancers very briefly because of how egregious that was as a mistake. Because it says, Technomancers don't have a Matrix Condition monitor. 3 paragraphs later, on the same page, the condition monitor for Technomancers. Okay. But it was so close together. I remember going, wait, what?
Yep. Yeah. And I think the Matrix section was the one that the most they just wholesale lifted from the other section, because it was where I found the most references to things that were still in 5th edition. Like the fact that in multiple places it still referenced grids.
Yeah.
Especially in the Technomancer rules.
The Technomancer rules, I think, were the most out of everything. Specifically, the Decker, I think, got a bit more attention, but the Technomancer, they just straight up went, eh.
Well, and then they also, because they got rid of limits, they didn't know what to do with a bunch of the stats on the deck. So they were like, now it relates to edge, but also it's a dice pool modifier.
Yeah. Oh, that's another one. So you can bind your sprites, right?
I could. Yeah.
Okay.
They got rid of spirit binding. Yeah, the rules for sprites were the same as in 5th edition and didn't match up with the rules for spirits.
Yeah. So historically, Technomancers have basically been mages for the internet. They've used the same systems, they've used the same stuff, and they just rename them like sprites are spirits. You used to be able to summon them, compile them, as the preface can summon his spirits. You used to be able to bind them, like you could bind spirits. You can't bind spirits anymore, for whatever reason. God knows why they did that. And it's not as important for a Shadowrunner. It's super important for the setting because traditionally spirits guard facilities and stuff like that. What do you do now? Does a mage summon them every day? Is that their job? They just sit there summoning spirits in the morning until they've just hit their cap of like 18 level 1s or something? It completely changes the way the universe works.
Yep.
And it just doesn't make sense. There's also...
They at least changed it so that spirits now last through one sunrise and one sunset before they vanished. Because I think previously in 5th, it was the first time a sunset or a sunrise happens, they disappear, which would mean that every Shadowrunner would attack a facility at sunrise or sunset because the spirit would vanish and be replaced.
Well,
now,
that's the thing, right? It's meant to be a disadvantage to spirits, but they made spirits more advantageous. Actually, that's a really good point. Now mentioning that. Hey, who here's got a tag eraser? Do you like ammo?
I think I actually have a tag eraser.
I have one. I got one explicitly for the purpose so that I could erase the fucking tags on everyone's ammo.
So, 4th and 5th edition have been a little bit back and forth on the idea of ammo.
Oh no, you got that. That's right.
Yeah, but the general consensus has been all ammo in the Shadowrun universe is caseless. Because it makes it easier, less moving parts, cleaner, etc., blah, blah, blah. So all ammo's been caseless. There's no casing to get rid of. It means you don't have to worry about casings at crime scenes as well. Great. In 6th edition, they went, you know what? Overnight, all ammo now has cases, which means all firearms have changed overnight. The entire arms industry has changed overnight. And all your cased ammo has a tag in it that you need to erase. You must do this to all your ammo. Why is this in the rules? Who is going to enjoy making rolls to remove tags from their ammo, which they'll go, oh.
I think we also clarified that I could just buy the hits because of my,
Yeah, I just said, I'm happy you can buy the hits. Here's the thing, right? If you fail the roll, and you then go, right, can I detect a tag? Yes, there's still a tag there. You just do it again. So it literally has no purpose other than to be a slight time filler in busy downtime. Why did someone make that a rule? And also, it's a rule that has a knock-on effect.
Probably the same person who was like, what if we made ammo more complicated? Maybe they didn't get the memo.
Yeah, give the joke.
Maybe that person didn't find out they were supposed to make things simpler.
The one thing I don't get
It's
about
both
that
the
though
ammo
is
section.
Like
it
it would fall
completely
under all one person, right? Like you handle ammo stuff, or you handle all the ammo rules.
Yeah, and that one person didn't get the message that ammo was supposed to be simpler.
The thing is, that one also has a massive knock-on effect on the entire lore of the universe of, all ammo's caseless, which has been the case in previous editions. It's just so weird.
Yay.
Also, riggers. Riggers are trash. You're better being a meat space driver than a rigger. Be a mage with the enhanced attribute spell, enhanced your reaction. You're a better driver. Seriously, riggers are useless these days.
Okay. I think that we kind of covered all of the topics that we wanted to touch on. Does anyone have a topic that they feel we didn't talk about that you'd like to express emotions about and give constructive feedback on? Or, oh yeah, Josh.
There was one part of the book that we haven't touched on at all.
No.
Did anyone read the in-universe fiction?
Oh, fuck no. I've never read it.
The quality's always been quite middling.
Like,
The
you
lore
look at any
stuff
rule
in there,
book,
yeah.
unless it's like, this is the book that initiates the universe, it tends to be kind of hit and miss for in-book rulebook fiction.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't enjoy it. I'm not going to say it was bad, because it wasn't badly written or anything like that. But I was like, before the show, I'll read through this, kind of get me in the mood, get some ideas flowing, see what's going to happen. And I think it just didn't work. I read the fiction. One was about a Johnson who was being betrayed, and the other was about a solo runner. And
neither are relatable.
I guess it helps inform the universe a little bit, but for the kind of game that we were going to be playing, it just really missed the mark, and I was glad it wasn't very long.
So
It was kind of a shame.
I know the issues that bad fiction can cause, because when I was picking up Shadowrun in 4th edition, there's a bit of fiction in 4th edition rulebook that had me very confused about a specific rule. And this is why I have problems with the in stuff fiction, because I think it should be... Because when you're a new character, like a new player to a system, you really want to read that fiction to try and get the flavor.
Yeah,
to get
you
a
want
sense of
to
how
know what
things
the
work.
universe is like, how
Yeah.
you can use your abilities, inventive ways to do things,
In
and like
4th
get hyped
edition-
up for the kind of stories that you can tell in your game.
In 4th edition, there's a very specific action order in terms of who has control of the device. The person holding the device has the least control. The person who remotes into a device and remote controls it has the medium control. A person who has jumped into a device using a rigging deck has the most control. Piece of fiction in the 4th edition rulebook says, the rigger was in the helicopter and I hacked in and took control and flew it away and slammed it into a building, and like, I'm confused. Am I getting this rule wrong? I had to go ask people, because I was new to Shadowrun and it was just, no, the fiction's terrible, don't read it. If you want to read good Shadowrun fiction, read Burning Bright. It is a really good novel from the early 90s about Chicago. Recommend it. Sorry if I have a lot of opinions on this. Shadowrun is my most GM system that's informed my playstyle, and as a GM I touch on every rule section, so it really hurts me when this happens. I think it's really bad for consumers. I think it's really bad for a system that deserves better, and a universe that's so good and rich. Makes me sad.
Yeah, this is what I was about to say, is that I think we should make it clear. I think we've said it already, but we should make it clear. We love Shadowrun. We love the setting of it. We love playing in the world, and that's why we've done, like, across a few years of Roll for It, 3 seasons of Shadowrun. We've tried it 3 different times, but the problem is that every single time we've come away from it going, I really wish the rules were better. I love the system, and I want the rules to allow me to fully enjoy the world, but it always doesn't work, and we're gonna have to look for something else. We still want to play Shadowrun. We still want to be in the Shadowrun universe, but we can't do it with 5th edition or with 6th edition. We've got to find something else. So that's where we're at.
Someone raised a good point in chat, which is the Shadowrun games. Shadowrun games, good games, decent games. They don't have the same vibe of the many options because they are a video game. Like, you can't be like, hey, GM, can I do this? So you're a little bit limited. They've got set combat encounters and so on. But they're good, and they're set in the 50s, I believe, or maybe it's the 40s. They're a lot early in the timeline, but they're good games. And the music playing right now, Hairbrain Screams by John Everest for the Shadowrun games. They're solid games and it's good music. So also thanks to them for allowing us to play the music. Go check out the games.
All right. So yeah, we're gonna wrap this up. We really appreciate you all sticking through this. I think for us, I think we all kind of touched on all of this, is that we love Shadowrun in the sense of like we love the world, we love playing the general like what would you call it, like the cyberpunk aspect of it, and they have the basics, right? Like it's just just got to touch on a couple other things in order to really make it work and be something that we all want to play and not.
Cyberpunk, is it Cyberpunk Red? Is the game coming out for Cyberpunk game? They made a new edition of the tabletop. That's meant to be decent. I've heard of.
There is
check it out. I mean,
Cyberpunk Red. I've just looked at, out of curiosity, Drive Through RPG. Cyberpunk Red Jumpstart Kit is their best-selling title, and in number 2 is Shadowrun 6th edition, which is interesting. But yeah, they're doing cyberpunk stuff. I don't know anything about that world, but cyberpunk.
I've heard the rules are okay.
RPG, right?
Yeah. And I think that's why they did this with 6th edition, is that they were like, oh crap, Cyberpunk's coming out, we need to be into it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think on our front, we do really like that aspect of it. So we are going to be looking at some other systems, but that's going to be a thing that's going to take some time to really like look into and see which ones we really would want to delve into. We do have a plan for what's coming up next. We will tease you all about it. We have to bake a new trailer. We have to like get all of our stuff set up. So as per usual, we'll still provide you high quality content. We just felt that if we're going to end a show, we wanted to make sure that this is the first time we've ever done this, that we gave it justice, that we like really provided reasons why, and that way like everyone really understands it. So if you watched the season and you really enjoyed it, because I think hopefully from the viewer's perspective, it wasn't as complicated, because we tried to really make it like all of us really spent a lot of time, but it was like we were all trying like really hard to make it all work, and I think like that ultimately made it frustrating for certain players. So I think like we just want to make sure that we're like ultimately we want to be having fun too, so that when you guys watch us, you know that we're having fun. So moving forward, we will have a show that's in the interim. We'll be announcing that, so stay tuned for that. I know
Maggie's announcing announcements. This is topsy-turvy days.
But they know that a show's going to be coming, so it's not really an announcement. It's pretty
I thought we were announcing them today.
Yeah.
No, we're announcing announcements.
But those things are coming down the line, so we'll stay with us. We still have some really awesome stuff planned for you all, and I guess will we do outros? Is that?
Oh yeah, we'll do outros. So
are we not at least telling them what we're doing next week?
I think it hasn't all been finalized.
We're still waiting to final. If you want, we can tell them the gist of it. But we haven't finalized people.
I think we should do like a
system.
We should do it compartmentalized. Okay.
I don't have the assets.
Yeah. So we have something coming next week. I think it's an interesting premise, and I'm hoping that we can pull it off. So hopefully you'll enjoy that. We've got to finalize a few things though, so we'll be announcing that soon. But in the meantime, there will be VTM Season 2, Episode 1, going live on the YouTube channel in just over 2 hours. So if you want to open that up, you can get in the chat already, and there'll be a big timer coming.
I'll chuck a link at you now.
Link's been
chucked.
chucked.
You guys get 2 hours extra in your life. Everyone's like, I don't know what to do with my life now.
You know what you should do? You should go download Burning Bright if you want more Shadowrun stuff. If you want to be able to play Shadowrun, go download one of the games by Hairbrain Schemes. They're probably really cheap. They've been out a while. I recommend Dragonfall or Hong Kong are the better ones. The first one didn't have the full mechanics that they implement in the later games, although it's first, they aren't really connected. You can totally dive in a later game. If you want to play Shadowrun, go check out Anarchy if you want fast-paced. Go check out Blades in the Dark if you want a heist game that's really, really tight. Go check out Scum and Villainy, which is a play on Blades in the Dark, but for a sci-fi setting. Or go check out the Shadowrun Blades in the Dark hack that I can't remember the name of. What's it called? Shadows in the Dark?
Runners in the Shadows.
Runners in the Shadows. There you go. Check out that one as well, which is, I believe, just a freely available mod for Blades in the Dark. That's what you want to do.
I'd also say there's a couple of generic systems that you could easily port into Shadowrun too. People were mentioning Genesis. Cypher is another solid one.
I think someone's made one called like Street Runners or something.
It says something about Shadowrun that there are so many alternatives to Shadowrun which are literally, this is our system but Shadowrun.
Yep. I honestly think the best thing for Shadowrun right now is the license to go to someone else, and it makes me very sad because it will mean there's going to be a huge time gap if that happens.
Give it to Pegasus. They always seem to do fantastic jobs fixing the rulebooks for Germans.
The exception to everything we've said today is probably anyone who is German or can read German very well. Pegasus games are different to Catalyst, and they specifically have the license for the Shadowrun IP in Germany. What they tend to do is write their own rulebooks, and the quality for them is incredibly high. They have amazing splat books. Or they take the pre-release stuff that's already been released by Catalyst, and then they alter it, fix it, and change it. And they already recognize the issues. If you are German, I would actually say probably your best bet is to maybe actually have a look at Shadowrun. It might have changed. Alternatively, I think Shadowrun 5th edition is still free if you want it in the German edition, so it might still be 3, so go check that if you're German. Anyway, announcements and stuff. We've got loads of stuff on the Patreon, including Game of Thrones characters. We've got some stuff coming in terms of NPC names, etc. Go check that out. There's also a recap video coming later this week if you are at the right tiers. There's also going to be announcements, which is a great place to check them out is our Discord. And with that said, let's start off...
Without spoiling anything about those, I think I should say I know that everyone was here for Shadowrun, and that was what they wanted to see. But I think that, like us, a lot of the people watching are also frustrated with Shadowrun and are looking for alternatives, and so are we. So do hang around, because we might be able to find things that you can move onto when we move on to them too.
Yeah.
There might be a reason we listed a bunch of games.
Yeah.
We know that we need to try something
between
else.
us all, we have a pretty wide knowledge of other ways to go about Shadowrun style games, and we want to explore that because we've got that Shadowrun itch, and we wanted to scratch it, and Shadowrun isn't scratching it, so we'll have to find something else.
And particularly from my point of view, it's just me. I always feel bad about presenting a product that I do not think is worth the customer's time, because we might be able to present it as a show because we have so much focus and polish that we try and do to make things look good quality to you, is that it might make you think, oh, I should totally get this and check it out, when it's definitely not ready. So personally, on my value, I think that we've got other things that we think should scratch that itch better. Check them out for yourself, or we're going to be playing them. So
there's two factors of like, we should be having fun, because us having fun, everyone enjoys. And then also like, whether intentionally or not, whatever we play is an endorsement for whatever we're playing. And if we don't believe in what we're playing, then that's not, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's the same thing why like we've had games come to us and be like, hey, we want to sponsor you. And we're like, we take a look at the game and then we're like, oh, we would have to change a lot of things in here. Here's our feedback. And then we don't have a sponsor with them because like it's not going to be good for them either if we're just changing all of their stuff. And yeah. I think EE had it.
I remember
like,
where
I am brutally
you can
honest.
make something look good and it might not be necessarily, then you're all buying it and you're like, this doesn't play out the same way as it does with them. So
there was one in particular where we were trying to like get some kind of deal lined up, and then he actually got a copy of the book and was like, oh, this is terrible.
Yeah. And again, it's another universe that I really, really like, and I really want to play that universe.
Yep.
And it's a real shame.
oh yeah, that other one. Yeah.
So sad because he was so hyped about this rulebook that was coming out, and then I watched him go.
I went through like 4 layers of finding a person to get us a sponsorship.
And to be fair to them, they were really nice. They were said, yeah, we can totally sponsor you. They gave us a rulebook in advance to look at. So totally, thank you very much to them. I looked at the rulebook, and the rules were pretty terrible. And no, I was like, I can't play this. I can't make it look good. No, not as a GM. Which is a shame. I think that the very, very core concept of Roll For It in particular is that we try and be consumer focused and honest and good people. There are enough tabletop shows out there that aren't good people, so we try and make sure that people get, paid reasonably and also demonstrated to reasonably. Like, we want to demonstrate the product to you reasonably as well. I think everyone would agree on that, right?
Yeah. Of course.
We don't want to sell out, and we don't have to, because we're entirely supported by our fans.
Amazing Patreons because of you guys.
So go check out the Patreon, a YouTube membership that you can now do. That was a good segue there, Bentham. You're getting really good at this.
I've always got to tie it in. It's my job.
Right, in which case, we're going to go quickly through people where you can find them until next week, except in the case of some people who are jet-setting off to lovely locations, because I want to point out, we might have kept going for a few more episodes to try and see how it worked, except for the fact that a few people have decided that they have places to be that have sun and sand.
I mean, I live
So-
where sun and sand exist already. So.
Oh, that's true. Okay, fair enough. Different sun and different sand.
Yes.
Let's start
all the
off.
suns and sands.
Let's start off with, I think, the person who had the toughest time in the rules. Lauren, who are you? What are you doing? Where can we find you? You
That's fine.
had the Matrix section.
Whatever.
Yeah,
It was
you were
fine.
you were presented
Follow
with
that
the
sword
worst
for y'all.
rules.
Hi, I'm Random Tuesday. You can find me at Random Tuesday pretty much all the places, although I'm going to disappear for like 2 weeks because I am one of those people. I'm going on vacation. But I will likely be posting many of my adventures from said vacation on social media because that is the only work I'm allowing myself to bring with me. So follow me over on Twitter or Instagram if you would like to see cool pictures of basically just pictures of all of the food I'm going to eat in Hong Kong and Korea, South Korea. I'm very excited for that. But then I will be back again and stream on Twitch and do all of those.
I
great-
like the fact you had to specify South Korea.
People have asked, and I'm like,
Really?
I would be going to. I don't even think. Like, people have asked. And
Yeah,
I'm
that's
like,
the place I'm going with my partner. North Korea. Great location. Absolutely beautiful
I,
fields.
I've heard such good things about its depressing dystopian reality.
Hey, it's like trying to read the Shadowrun rulebook. You get the same kind of vibe.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm very excited, but follow me on social media, Random Tuesday.
Okay.
What about, I feel like the second hardest rules, maybe, Beb? Magic?
I like.
We're all gonna just fight
I
over
say
it.
that I don't feel like it was. I say I
I
don't
feel
feel
like
like
your
it was
turn
that
took
bad,
the
but then
longest
people
about
point
them.
back to me. Yeah, people point back to me how long I went on about it, and things like the fact that I rewrote the entire thing in a Word document. I couldn't read it.
Who
But
are
I,
you? Where can we find you?
I'm Bentham. I have a YouTube channel where I play games sometimes. The games I've been playing recently have been Satisfactory, where I'm about to
Oh,
hit 30 episodes.
I'm so sorry. If you don't got any good games.
Wow. Oh, I see. God damn it. It's like, it's both an insult and a joke. Oh, God. But yeah, Satisfactory, where I'm 30 episodes into making a ridiculous main bus in the middle of a desert, so I called it Desert Bus, because jokes. It's ridiculous. Also,
That's a game already,
Volcanoids.
right?
Yeah, I know, it's a silly joke, because it's just a reference, but I had to call it something. I made a main bus space in a desert. It's my thing. Also Volcanoids, where I'm just running around trying to get the one item I need, which is what the game's become right now, but it gets better in a bit. But then also Saturday, we played Unrailed, which I think Josh recommended to us, and is amazing, super fun. 4 people trying to build the tracks in front of a train as the train gets faster and faster, and you yell at each other because there's only one axe and one pickaxe to go between you all, and you have to move around the train and past each other, and it's basically just lots of, oh god, we've run out of wood or iron, or
Tracks.
people running next to the train trying to get past each other and going, I gotta get past it.
Yeah, and then some idiot puts the track going in the wrong direction. So you're like, I guess we're going this way now. We've got to snake it all the way back to the right direction.
Yeah. Who would do that?
Don't know who did that. Can't really remember. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, that's what I've been up to. It's been really fun. We're probably gonna play more Unrailed next week because of how fun it is. But yeah, speaking of Unrailed, Josh, what have you been up to?
Yeah, if you want to see more Argle Bargle, you can find me gaming FTL pretty much all over the internet. I will try and edit that Unrailed video. I'm also working on a video essay about physics in video games, and if you want to see me do tabletop RPG stuff, Strange Adventures on YouTube, I'm going to be uploading stuff maybe there at some point.
Okay, and speaking of other people who will be fleeing the country to get away from things, Maggie, what about you?
Hi. I'm not necessarily going on vacation, but it's kind of a vacation. One of my family members is getting married in Bali, so I get to go enjoy the loveliness that is Bali for a little bit.
And the
Long
loveliness that is plain
round trip, but it will
footwells.
be fun. What was that?
The loveliness that is plain footwells.
That is what?
Plain footwells.
Oh yeah. So if you want to check out stuff that I'm up to, you can go to Margaret Crone everywhere. I always let you guys know whenever I'm doing stuff. I'm kind of on a bunch of different things. I do have a Warhammer game, a Warhammer 40k game. If you want to come check it out on Mondays at 7 p.m. PDT over at twitch.tv/Margaret Crone. And we just wrapped up our Witch Girls content. So if you want to go check that out on the YouTube channel at Margaret Crone Plays, that was really lovely. Random Tuesday was there as well. And it was an intense final episode. So if you want to go check that out. And yeah, I will be at TwitchCon. So if you're going to be at TwitchCon, definitely come say hi to me. I am going to be doing like a pancake bake-off for charity, which will be absurd. I've never done pancake art before. I probably should practice, but maybe it'll be more comedic if I don't practice at all. And then I will also have a meet and greet and some other fun things going on, but I feel like those are probably the most interesting. So yeah. I'm excited to see people who are going to be there and to make more lovely Roll For It content. And of course, I'm really excited for what we have planned here on Roll For It. So I hope you all are enjoying it. And I'm Terlicium. Where can people find you at, and what are you up to?
Sorry, I got sidetracked. You said Roll For It content, and I took that as Roll For It con tent. So Roll For It con, I really want to have a tent now.
Oh, that's really funny. I kind of. I thought of, and then I took 2 seconds to think about the logistics of like streaming content, and I was like, no, never mind,
No.
taking it back.
No, don't do it. Yeah, I do stuff. That's it. I won't be doing Borderlands because our DPS has fled the country. Sorry, who am I kidding? DPS. Yeah, we started doing Borderlands 1 so that we could do Borderlands 2, so we could do Borderlands 3 when it came out. And when it comes out...
Look, I didn't think about the dates that I was trying... That is requiring a level of future planning that I do not have. That's fine. I also haven't even finished Borderlands 2 yet, so...
I mean,
it's fine. We'll play it when it's like slightly less popular, but still...
On a calendar like me, Lauren? Come on.
I have a lot of things in a calendar, and apparently that was not one of them.
So we've confirmed that Maggie is more of a Type A personality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We're similar, but we're not quite the same.
Your organization is on the same level as your coffee making skills.
Wow.
Well, it's not that bad.
Tense and dramatic.
Look, generally the coffee was great, except for that one time.
It was the most effective coffee ever. You could put it that way.
I was very awake. I might have maybe OD'd on coffee.
I was worried you were going to have a heart attack or something.
She vibrated.
She did.
Your coffee did not come with directions, so I guessed.
You put in 3 scoops!
Well,
For a
you
cup.
put in like 5 when you do non-instant. And I put in the same amount that I would have put in
we
for hot
even
chocolate.
dumped it out. We even dumped it out and like added more water and milk and stuff. But like,
Yeah, we
my
turned your cup
leg-
into like a half.
I was on a bench with. If you go back and watch, you probably can't notice, but I was on a bench with EE on one side of me and Josh on the other, and my leg was like, I could not stop it. It was just going like crazy.
Fine. It's fine, whatever.
Okay, so
And I was like holding my glass like.
since we have the chance to have a quick talk, instead of doing my outro spiel, I just want to give you the short anecdote of that, because it's one of the most surreal experiences I've ever had. So that was the Saturday of RollCon. So we were all in the same place. So instead of Vampire the Masquerade with everyone on cameras, we did Vampire the Masquerade with everyone on cameras, except for the fact that my character was joined by both Josh's and Maggie's characters, and we decided, sod it, let's do this. And we were above the garage, which means it's a little bit cold. So Maggie, in her like very seductive outfit, was wearing like very cut, like plunging neckline lace and very tall woolly socks because cold and off camera.
It was cold. I was cold.
And I'm sitting right
It's a
next
good
to her.
look.
So like I look at her and I'm like, okay, there's a lot of cleavage and woolly socks. Strange, but Maggie's there and she's vibrating loads. And I'm like, Maggie, okay? And she's like, I had coffee. I'm like, okay. And then it gets worse. And I'm like, why is it getting worse? The coffee should be starting to wear off. I know caffeine has a half-life of 7 hours, but this is ridiculous. And then we get to a scene that Maggie's obviously been building up to, no spoilers. And I'm like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
But that was one of the most surreal, weird role-playing experiences. Anyway, with that fun anecdote, yeah, I do stuff. Bye. We'll see you again next week.
Dear.